able to target.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to request your patience. We've got a very special guest coming into our studio. But before that, we just want to quickly play out what the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said earlier in the day.
On April 22, 2025, Pakistani and Pakistan-trained terrorists belonging to the Lashkar-e-Taiba carried out a savage attack on Indian tourists at Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir in India. They murdered 26 people, including one national of Nepal, causing the largest number of civilian casualties in a terrorist attack in India. Pakistan also has a well-deserved reputation as a haven for terrorists from around the world, with internationally proscribed terrorists enjoying impunity there. Earlier this morning, as you would be aware, India exercised its right to respond and preempt, as well as deter more such cross-border attacks. These actions were measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible.
All right, so there's been an outpouring of support from the international community after Pahalgam, and of course now with the action that India has taken with Operation Sindur. One country that has been the very first to come out and express solidarity and support with India is Israel. I'm now joined by the Honorable Ambassador of Israel to India, Reuben Azar. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Your first thoughts on a day such as this. You spoke to us when Pahalgam happened in the aftermath of the terrorist attack, and now India today has carried out Operation Sindur, in a way, avenging what happened in the terror attack.
Well, it's only natural that in the backdrop of this terrible attack, in which people were killed in such an atrocious way, India would exercise its rights for self-defense, and we support Indians' right for self-defense.
Israel found itself in a similar position on the 7th of October 2023. India was one of the first countries to come out in Israel's support unequivocally. Do you see this also, what happened to India, similar to what happened to your country and the response as well?
Zaka, my sense is that as much as India and Israel are rising as economic powers, as regional powers, the terrorist organizations are becoming more desperate, and they are looking for more shocking ways to hit us, to kill civilians, to do things that are unspoken of, to breach any rule in the book, any rule of humanity, any rule that decent nations have crafted in order to maintain decency. They are breaking all of that because they want to bridge the strategic gap that is being created as a result of our success and their failure.
Why do you think then there isn't a consensus understanding in the world that you cannot have terrorists and you cannot have violence against civilians? That's what happened in Israel on 7th of October. That's what happened in Pahalgam on 22nd of April. Why does the world have a different set of rules? I mean, terrorists cannot be attacking non-combatants. It's as simple as that.
Well, you know, on the positive side, you can say that indeed you have been getting a lot of solidarity from countries in the world, and that's what happened also following the 7th of October, when people saw the terrible pictures of terrorists boasting about the killing, about the torture, about the burning, about the decapitation. So the question is what happens after that? Mm-hmm. Because beyond condemnation, sometimes people tend to do contextualization of the situation, which has to be completely out of the equation. Terror is terror and has to be condemned, and we have to act in order to eradicate terrorism.
I also want to ask you, now there seems to be a lot of concern about whether there will be an escalation, will there be a full-fledged war between India and Pakistan? Are you worried? Is the government of Israel worried about such a possibility?
Well, we always prefer a situation of peace, and we trust the Indian government that will do the necessary calculations on how to defend itself in the best interests of the Indian people.
But what would your word of, I know diplomats generally do not share words of advice with foreign governments, particularly host countries, but from your experience in dealing with counterterrorism in Israel, what would your advice be on how India should go forth now that this operation has concluded?
Look, there's no doubt that this is a challenging situation. Because on the one hand, you cannot stay put in a situation in which you are attacked in such an atrocious way. On the other hand, of course, democracies always aspire for peace and always aspire for stability. But this cannot be on the account of an increasing threat of terrorism that will wipe out your citizens. So that's why we need to act, and we have to overcome that dilemma. And of course, the ways in which we do that have to meet at the end of the day our interests. And this is the challenge that we are standing in front of.
I know, again, this is a bit of a risque question, but was there any form of intelligence sharing between Israel and India ahead of this operation?
Look, Israel and India are cooperating on a range of issues in a general way. We do not deal with specific situations. Okay. We do not elaborate on them. And Israel is not part of this conflict. This is completely up to the government of India to build up the capabilities, to measure the intelligence, to create the answers that are needed. And we, as a country that knows the pain of being hit by terror time and again, we identify with the feeling, we understand the challenge, we share sympathy, and we wish success to the government of India.
I also want to talk about what's happening in Gaza. I'll just come to that in 1 second. But, you know, something that you said earlier, that with each terrorist attack, it is getting more outrageous. You know, for example, attacking tourists or music festival goers in Israel. Here in Kashmir, they attacked, you know, people, segregating them by faith. As the terrorists also do these outrageous things with each attack, the costs for states like Israel, like India, is also going up. India, for the first time now, has carried out multi-location hits, over 9 locations today. This is the first time India has done that across the LOC, across the international border. Do you think this is an unsustainable position? The more grotesque the terror attack is, the more states are forced to raise the cost?
First of all, it's a growing threat, because beyond the degree of atrocities that are being committed, you have a situation here in which terrorist organizations are being equipped with sophisticated weapons, and eventually they create strategic threats. And this is what happened on the 7th of October in Israel. So, as much as we have faced it, there's no doubt that other countries are going to face it. And then the degree of the dilemma increases. When it comes to Gaza, we have made a very clear decision. We are not going to agree for Hamas to stay in power in the Gaza Strip, and we are determined to bring our hostages back. We've been able, through a combination of negotiations and military pressure, to bring back 194 hostages. There are still 59 left in the Gaza Strip. As time continues, time passes, it becomes more difficult for us to extract our hostages from Hamas, and therefore the Israeli cabinet has made a very important decision. We are going to change the way in which this war is going to end. We are now in preparations for a massive operation that is going to include different elements: civilian, military, and foreign policy. On the humanitarian side, we are going to create a special zone in which population is going to be evacuated to, but this time the humanitarian assistance coming from the international community is not going to flow to the hands of Hamas. That's number one. Okay. Number two, we are increasingly going to take more chunks of the Gaza Strip until Hamas comes to terms with our conditions, which I mentioned: release of the hostages and giving up their arms. They can do it right now and, you know,
avoid the
operation.
Yeah.
So we are very clear now in the way that we are uttering our intentions, so they can have the chance to avoid more casualties, to bring back normalcy to the population of Gaza and the population of Israel.
But Ambassador, you know, the criticism against that move is Israel's now preparing the ground to go and occupy Gaza, to be there indefinitely, and that means the two-state solution is pretty much dead on arrival. How would you counter, or how do you respond to that criticism?
Well, first of all, Hamas has killed the two-state solution by doing the unthinkable. An unprovoked attack after Israel has withdrawn from the Gaza Strip. Okay? That finished the way that we saw. The second thing is that, you know, Israel doesn't have any intention of permanently staying in the Gaza Strip. We are working with the international community, and after the first phase of preparation and the second phase of action, there will be a third phase of creating an alternative to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So this alternative cannot be created as long as Hamas is terrorizing the population. We've seen only in the last few days the terrible pictures of Hamas torturing and massacring people just because they wanted some food, okay? And we know that they are having all the supplies in their places of hide, occulting it from the population, selling it to the population. You know, this cannot continue. So Israel is determined to bring this war to an end, and we are explaining very logically and very openly what we're going to do in the next phase.
Just one final word before we go, and I'll go back to where I started. India has taken a definitive stand, definitive action today with these multi-location strikes. You know, what do you reckon is the way forward in this battle against terrorism? Because just like Israel, India's been fighting this battle of terrorism for the last 30, 40 years. And today is a line in the sand. No one thinks that terrorism is going to end. But then how does one break out of this cycle of terror attack, punitive action, terror attack, and then punitive action again?
Well, Zaka, there is much more than the international community can do in order to tackle terrorism.
Like
Not only condemning, but also putting pressure and putting sanctions on those involved in terrorism. We can create networks to exchange information. We can develop tactics to deal with the terrorists. We can invest together in preventing the broadcast of radical content on social media and on electronic media. We can invest in education of the next generation. There are many things that we can do. So condemnation is not enough. And as much as we succeed in the international effort to tackle terrorism, there will be less need for the use of military means.
What about the states who are backing these proxies? Iran certainly is backing the Houthis and Hamas. In India, you know, we genuinely believe that these terror proxies will not survive if the state is not backing them. How come the international community never calls the states out?
Right. So that's a very good point. Those who harbor terrorists have to be exposed and have to be punished.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Ambassador Azhar. I know you have a busy schedule up ahead, but thank you very much indeed for joining us on an important day here in India in the fight against terrorism. We've been fighting this for the last 40 years now, but today a very momentous decision was taken and a momentous operation was undertaken where multiple locations were hit, both across the line of control as well as across the international border. And the group of people for whom this has meant the most are those victims, those wives, those daughters, those sisters who lost the male members of their families. We spoke to a few of them, and I want to play out some of those interviews just right now.
बहुत अच्छी बात है कि औरत फीमेल ऑफिसर्स को चांस दिया गया है और फीमेल ऑफिसर्स ने बिकॉज दे कैन रिलेट विद व्हाट वी आर गोइंग थ्रू so it is a very very good initiative, and in the future I really hope that there is equality in forces and in every department in India between men and women.
पहलगाम में जो आतंकी हमला हुआ था, अब ये कहा जाने लगा है, ये मांग उठने लगी है कि उन तमाम 26 लोगों को जिनकी हत्या की गई थी, निर्दोष लोगों की, निहत्थे लोगों की हत्या की गई थी, उन्हें शहीद का दर्जा दिया जाए. आप क्या कुछ समझती हैं इसको लेकर?
एब्सोल्युटली, मतलब सिर्फ शहीद नहीं, मुझे लगता है कि what my husband has given and what I have given, we have given our life. And if after that this is the minimum that we deserve, and this is the minimum that my husband deserves. He deserves the highest honor in this country, and I stand by it. He has sacrificed his life to make sure that something like this does not happen in the future, and he was a very very noble man. So he deserves the highest honor in this country.
Thank you.
All right, we're just getting some breaking news. According to intelligence sources, two dreaded terrorists from the Lashkar-e-Taiba, Abdul Malik and Mudassir, have been killed in this operation in Operation Sindur. These are two dreaded terrorists, high-value targets as they are called, HVTs, belonging to the Lashkar-e-Taiba, Abdul Malik and Mudassir, who have both been killed. I'm trying to see and go across to Arunima, our colleague who is tracking the story. Arunima, any information on who these two were, what their claim to fame is, what are the past attacks that they've been involved in?
So these are both designated as high-value Lashkar-e-Taiba. These terrorists are people who are accused of owning the Lashkar-e-Taiba for all big terrorist attacks in the and Mudassir, he has been on the radar of the person agency after the Pahalgam attack also. He was in Mauritius, he was in their camp. As for the dossier that he have on him, it is suspected that he will solemnize his and he will reach a camp when the Indian exile raised in that camp and killed him. The other person has been killed in that also somebody by the agencies for and there were two others in that camp. Total these four are being being labeled as high value targets by the Indian intelligence.
All right, so we can confirm this for our viewers that two high-value targets, Abdul Malik and one other person, who have been now killed in this Operation Sindur, which was carried out across multiple locations, 21 different strikes over a 25-minute period from 1:05 a.m. this morning to 1:30 a.m. I also want to go across to Mr. Amit Halevi, who is a member of parliament from Israel. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking with us. What is your first reaction, Mr. Halevi, to what you heard today, the special operation that was undertaken by the Indian Armed Forces, the Air Force and the Army, killing these terrorists, attacking these terror launch pads and terror infrastructure, much like Israel did to Hamas after October 7th?
Yes, well, we are in the same war, actually. You know that Israel is maybe in the main front, but actually this is the word of the continuing our fight, our war for liberation, actually since World War II. I think the same characters of the current enemy had, the Nazi regime enemy, all those radical Muslims all over the world, including Pakistan and India, actually tackled the same enemy that we, as you just said, that we have in Gaza, and not only in Gaza. I mean, the real enemy are not the radical Pakistans or the radical Gaza citizens or Hamas members. The real enemy, the enemy is the ideology. And this is the real danger. And all of us, I mean, all the free nations like India and the Western world, and all of us must get this in-depth understanding. We need to fight. We need to wipe out of the map those regimes that have the extreme ideology. I think this is the real target. I mean, not the proxy and the missiles and even not the nuclear weapon. I mean, all of those things are rotten fruits, but the source, the root of all of those tools in emission and everything is the regime that carry this neo-Nazi ideology.
But Mr. Halevi, how would you respond to those who say that, look, this is an asymmetric, imbalanced warfare. The terrorists need to strike just once. They have because of the nature of this conflict, they can impose far greater costs on states like Israel or India, whereas for India or Israel to respond, you are bound by conventions, bound by multilateral bodies like the UN, etc. That this is an imbalanced fight. The terrorists can come and attack civilians who don't have any guns or weapons to protect them, but when the state responds, it has to be within the framework of established laws and norms.
Well, we indeed need to change our approach, and I think all the international bodies, include the UN and all those judiciary forums that from time to time claims that Israel is doing wrong things and forbidden things. I think these are nonsense. We need to understand who is the enemy, and at least in the Hamas case, there is not really different between the civic environment and the military environment. In Arabic they said din wa dawla, means the religious and the state are one thing. That's why most of the terrorists are coming from the civic, from the society. This is the education, this is the religious concept, this is the education, this is the social organizations, this is the economy. All those things are part of the genocide machine of the Hamas. That's why there is not really distinction, there's no really different between all those things. And Israel really needed to change the method, and I think all the Western world, we need, in order to to stop this war, we need to control Gaza Strip. There is no other way to defeat the terror organizations, guerrilla fighters. We need to control Gaza Strip in order not only to demilitarize them, but what we need to do regarding what you have just said is to de-radicalize them. And that's why there is no other option, exactly like the Western world did with Japan and Germany in the last World War.
All right, Mr. Halevi, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Anit Halevi, who is an Israeli member of parliament. Well, I'm getting more breaking news that's coming through. The BCCI is now considering, and it's in touch with the central government about the IPL match that's going to be played tomorrow in Dharamshala. The BCCI wants to be doubly sure about Dharamshala as a venue, as the location. It's barely about 60 kilometers away from the international border with Pakistan. Payal Mehta has more details on this. So the BCCI in touch with the government. The government has said that it is going to be business as usual, but do you reckon that there might be a chance they might shift the venue or postpone this game?
We are still awaiting to see what the BCCI has been told by the government vis-a-vis the match which happens tomorrow, Zaka. That's an important thing to watch out for, because the BCCI is very, very, aware of the fact that a lot of people will come up for the match. They have to use floodlights in the evening. Will that empower the enemy nation? At least that is what a BCCI source has been telling me. That, is that something which is going to be, something that will actually harm India's interest in a way and empower the nation, the enemy nation? That is something which they want to really check. As far as the match which happens in the same venue on the 11th, we are given to understand by BCCI sources, Zaka, that it was a match between Mumbai and Punjab, and of course Punjab was the host, but that match is now being shifted to Mumbai, so the Mumbai Indians team will not need to travel, and the Punjab team will need to travel to Mumbai as well. So that's something which has been there. The BCCI always, although it's an autonomous body, always acts on the advice of the union government, and that's the reason they are still awaiting the final details coming in from the Home Ministry in particular, which is the nodal ministry as far as the safety and security is really concerned. So obviously, but as of now, the BCCI has decided to move the 11th match to Mumbai, is what we are given to understand. They're still waiting to see what the BCCI gets told, from the union government vis-a-vis the match tomorrow.
All right, we'll leave it at that, Payal. Thanks for joining us. So there's one match that is due to be held in Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh tomorrow, which is, of course, about 60 kilometers from the border. So there are some concerns around that. Whether or not that match gets shifted or postponed, we'll keep you updated on that. But as we close out this particular hour, I want to bring the focus once again to the near and dear ones, the wives, the sisters, the daughters who lost the male members of their family in Pahalgam, 26 of them who were shot in cold blood. And that's why this was named Operation Sindur, because in Hindu custom and Hindu tradition, Sindur is a mark of matrimony on a woman's forehead. And it's that Sindur which was wiped away with the killings of these husbands and brothers and sons on the 22nd of April. Nothing can bring closure. Those who perished cannot be brought back, but at least a sense of justice has been established today. Listen in to some of these victims and their families.
जब तक आतंकवाद खत्म ना हो, इस तरह की घटनाएं खत्म ना हो, तब तक मात्र मैं नहीं कहूंगा कि भाई भारत सरकार पूरे वर्ल्ड को ही इसके अगेंस्ट खड़ा होकर के और इनको नेस्ता नाबूद कर देना चाहिए.
Definitely a lot of justice is there, because the army people and air force people, they have done a lot of work, and they have attacked the 9 terrorist hideouts and they killed them. That's a good news for all the people of India, because hereafter there may not be any terrorists attacking Indian people.
हमको लगता है कंप्लीट होना चाहिए. बार बार ये टेररिस्ट अटैक आज पहले बाहर विजिट मतलब जो पीओके में हुआ है, हमेशा ही होते रहता है. ये जंग मतलब ये जो टेररिस्ट लोग को पूरा ख़त्म करना चाहिए. ऐसा मतलब स्ट्राइक तो किया है, मतलब स्ट्राइक जब किया है तो कंप्लीट होना चाहिए.
हमारे मीडिया के सभी भाइयों और दोस्तों मेरे मीडिया के दोस्तों और सारे प्रिंट मीडिया के भी मेरे भाइयों, आज हमने वर्किंग कमेटी मीटिंग बुलाई थी इसीलिए कि ये जो हमारे देश में घटना घटी है और जो सरकार कदम उठा रही है और उसी के साथ हमारे भारतीय सशस्त्र बलों पर भी हम गर्व करते हैं।
सस्ते वाले
He was personally monitoring Operation Sindur. So PM was monitoring Operation Sindur, so he was there, aware of what was going on and personally monitoring what was going on. So for some of the jibes that came at where is our Prime Minister and he's Gayab, etc., this is confirmation that he was right in the thick of it. And at the highest level of government, this Operation Sindur was being monitored, it's been planned and it's also now been implemented. Yes, Group Captain Vinod.
Great point. So let me quickly finish about this loitering munition. Most of the loitering munition today has the capability to go up without any target. And once the target pops up, it keeps loitering. And once the target pops up, it will go and hit the target. Erstwhile loitering munitions were against the radars. Today, loitering munition can be against anything. Point number one. Point number two, and coming back to Anand, your point. When is the last time that we have seen the premier of a country, of our country, Prime Minister of our country in the ops room, monitoring operations like they do in US? I mean, in the US operations, you've seen many times Obama monitoring the operations or even Junior Bush monitoring operations. Likewise, in India, this is the first time I think I have seen for the first time that Prime Minister is so much involved in monitoring the operations and also taking call as to what kind of targets to take. Very, very important. Muzaffarabad, I just came to know that the tolls have gone up to 30 to 31 people, which means big names and big people in Muzaffarabad must have gone. Same is in
Just give me a moment. I also want to go across to Aman Sharma, our political editor. So Prime Minister Modi monitoring these operations live. Aman, what more details do you have? All right.
This is an important development actually in the larger scheme of things, not just optically, but this does tell you that the Prime Minister is completely involved. And people who have been constantly critical of the Prime Minister perhaps will need to look back. I don't want to make this political at any level, but the fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister guiding this, you saw him on the first day itself. He returned from Saudi Arabia very, very quickly. He was on the first flight he's landing at 7 in the morning, held a meeting at the airport, came to his residence within an hour or two. He was already conferring with the inner core and the inner team, and by the evening he was chairing important meetings with the entire defense establishment.
Aman is also joining us. Aman, what more can you tell us? PM Modi was monitoring this live at 7 LKM.
Yes, Zaka, this feature we can confirm that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was monitoring Operation Sindur. He was very much in the thick of the things as the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force have conducted a joint coordinated strike inside 9 sites in Pakistan, especially targeting the terror headquarters of the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba. This strike is much, much bigger than Balakot. When one terror camp was targeted, now we have 9 sites, including the terror headquarters of the Jaish and the Lashkar. What we can confirm through top-level sources is that the Prime Minister was monitoring this operation. He had a busy day. Yesterday he was also at a media event later in the evening.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you for staying with us here at CNN News 18 as we stay continuously non-stop on Operation Sindur. Less than a fortnight after the brutal terror attack in Pahalgam that claimed 26 innocent civilian lives, Bharat has avenged the loss. Bharat conducted Operation Sindur, striking 9 terror sites, 21 locations in 25 minutes in the wee hours of the 7th of May, killing 17 terrorists. Jaish and Lashkar terror hotbeds have been absolutely decimated. Hizbul Mujahideen's core structure headquarters also targeted. The strikes have rattled Pakistan. In a climb down, Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has even said that if Bharat retreats, Pakistan military will show restraint. Top intel sources have told CNN News 18 2 dreaded terrorists from the Lashkar, Abdul Malik and Mudassir, have been killed in Operation Sindur. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a cabinet meeting after the strikes where he hailed the Indian Armed Forces with valor and also met President Draupadi Murmu at Rashtrapati Bhavan and briefed her about the operation. Home Minister Amit Shah has held a meeting with Chief Ministers, Chief Secretaries and DGPs of key states with their borders with Pakistan and Nepal. An all-party meet is also scheduled to be held sometime during the day on Thursday. Pakistani media reports suggest that Pakistan for now has authorized its armed forces to undertake corresponding action. So will there be a retaliation? Should Bharat brace itself for a reprisal attempt by the Pakistani military? We have to wait over the next 24 to 36 hours, even as this evening, 244 districts are getting set for the mock drills. Meanwhile, there is also the engagement with the international community, debriefing them and giving them, showing them proof of our action where we have restrained ourselves away from military and civilian establishments and targeted only terror camps and terror headquarters. Russia, Greece, China, Mauritius, the ambassadors, envoys of these nations are currently at South Block. They're being briefed by the Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, who was there along with the 2 women officers of the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force in the debrief earlier in the day. Siddhant now joining us with more details. Yes, Siddhant.
Well, that's right, Anand. In fact, just a short while back, the envoys of UNSC member countries have been called in here at South Block office of Ministry of External Affairs. In fact, we have seen envoys from Russia, China, France, United Kingdom, Greece, Mauritius, perhaps all these countries have been called to be briefed by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri. Perhaps, Anand, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri has a very, very significant role to play as far as the series of developments are concerned. In fact, we have also been told that he was very much inside the situation room yesterday at the time of Operation Sindur, and perhaps if you remember, he is somebody who first briefed Prime Minister Modi when Prime Minister Modi returned from Jeddah right at the airport. And in fact, today also this morning we saw that he was the one who opened the press briefing of the Indian side. And in fact, he is somebody who can give global context to perhaps what's happening. He is somebody who today exposed TRF, and he in fact made it very clear. In fact, he reiterated that India did provide evidence to the UNSC committee twice about TRF and its involvement with Pak-based terror groups. And in fact, so he knows things in and out. Perhaps this is the reason that these envoys have been called today to the South Block office of Ministry of External Affairs. And in fact, we have been told that the briefing has already started. In fact, we could expect some more envoys to arrive in some time from now. This is the second time, Anand, that Ministry of External Affairs is briefing envoys. In fact, for the first time, they were briefed when terror attack happened. They were briefed at that point in time also about Pakistan's involvement, how Pakistan executed this attack, Pakistan-backed terror groups executed this attack. And perhaps that really helped India to build a global consensus, Anand. And in fact, because of such briefings and also the friends and partners like France and other countries, India could get the UNSC statement which India got on 25th of April. Perhaps that statement is the context for conducting strikes in POJK and POK today. So such briefings are very important, significant, and in fact, all these countries have their envoys have come to the South Block office, and we can confirm this for our viewers that briefing has commenced.
Thank you for your inputs, Siddhant. We'll keep close tabs and we'll keep bringing our viewers all the updates around Operation Sindoor. We're also building up to the mock drills and also a possible reprisal or attempt at retribution, a face-saving exercise, as many are calling, by the Pakistani military. We have to wait and watch. The next 24 to 36 hours are critical, crucial for all of us as Bharatiya, because we also have to manage the international narrative. The whole of government approach has to follow through. And even as our forces are on alert, our domestic security personnel are also on alert. So there is an internal security grid. There is an attempt to be built. And I think all of us as civilians, as people of this country, have to cooperate, collaborate, and do the needful to ensure that we all remain safe. And there is any attempt at retribution by the Pakistan military at all levels is denied and also defeated. Ambassador Kawal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, with us. Michael Rubin, Senior Fellow, AEI, is with us. Major General Ian Cardozo is also with us. He's a war veteran, celebrated, and he's fought 3 wars and an amazing person. I have great admiration for him. And Professor Brahma Chalani is also with us. My namaste and Jai Hind to everybody. Thank you very much for your time. The first question is, Kawal Sibalji, the role of a foreign secretary is very critical in situations and times like this. But I would also request you to dwell on the title for this operation, Operation Sindoor, and the collective messaging even at the briefing, where there is a Kashmiri Pandit, 2 decorated women officers cross-religion who are making the briefing to the world about Operation Sindoor.
I think it has been very well done. I listened to the entire briefing by the Foreign Secretary. The fact that the Foreign Secretary is personally briefing the media is because the issues are very, very serious. And the briefing has to be done extremely knowledgeably and professionally by a competent person at the highest level in the Indian Foreign Office. It just can't be left to the spokesman. The fact that these 2 women officers have been detailed for giving the briefing from the Army side and the Air Force side is very astute in terms of public relations. First of all, the fact that our women are now active in our armed forces. They have a voice. We have confidence in them, and they can brief the media on an event which is extremely serious in terms of its repercussions, both bilaterally and regionally and internationally. So it gives a certain image of our armed forces, inclusiveness and this and that, especially that there is a lady, the Muslim lady who's doing this. It's a very, very good message to send, to show that the effort of the terrorists to foment internal communal divisions in India is not working. That our armed forces especially are all together and the public is all together. And this is a good message to send. Now, in terms of managing the international community and international opinion, I am currently sitting in London and I just watched what the BBC is saying. It is very slanted in Pakistan's favor. A lot of what Pakistan says is just taken at its face value and conveyed. And there's no reference to terrorism. The word terrorism they don't want to use. And there is no, the usual thing that where is the evidence and stuff like that. Pakistan is asking for evidence as if Pakistan has never engaged in terrorism before all its life. And it's the first time that they're being accused of terrorism, and India has to provide proof. And this will be true of most Western media, I can tell you. Because, and then of course this whole business about, they begin by saying 2 nuclear armed neighbors and stuff like that. Again, playing into Pakistani hands, that the restraint has to be more on the Indian side. bigger power, more responsible power, and Pakistan is an irresponsible power and can use nuclear weapons and can threaten to use. In fact, they're saying that both countries are threatening to use nuclear weapons, which is absolutely wrong. India has not threatened to use nuclear weapons. Only the Pakistani side has. So the media management globally will be difficult. Countries will ask for restraint and de-escalation. A lot will now depend on what Pakistan does. To my mind, Pakistan has to react. It is a question of amour propre. It's a question of the idea of Pakistan. It's a question of the Pakistan military being the ultimate guarantor of the existence of Pakistan and the idea of Pakistan. So they are bound to react. Now, we have very carefully chosen terrorist training camps and terrorism-related targets. And those places and modules which were involved in terrorism on our side in the past, as we have explained in a press briefing. Now, there are no terrorist camps or terrorist modules or anything else on our side which Pakistan can attack. So they have to attack military targets. And that would be escalation. If they do that, then of course we will have to attack their military targets, which we have specifically said that we've not done, we don't intend to do, unless of course we are provoked.
They have to do something which they can claim as non-escalatory, but there are no terror camps on Indian soil. Michael Rubin, how do you see this playing out? Thank you for your time. Many nations have voiced support, many nations have voiced concern, but the wordings or the way Turkey and China have worded their statements gives us an impression that they are leaning towards the Pakistanis in this matter. How would you read the situation?
Well, look, there's no secret that Turkey and China are going to be leaning towards the Pakistanis. The United States will ultimately lean towards India, but Indian diplomats need to crush the moral equivalence we heard uttered by Donald Trump almost immediately. But moving forward, I actually have two worries, and it's not simply Pakistan's inevitable retaliation to India's Operation Sindur. What I worry about is, number one, that the United States is going to prioritize quiet over the defeat of terrorism. And then we get into a cycle like what we saw in Israel, where Hamas will attack, and then suddenly diplomats get all weak-kneed and just try to get quiet, even though they're allowing the terrorists to live another day, and that just makes the inevitability of more terrorism. In fact, it rewards terrorism. The other thing I worry about, despite the apparent success of Operation Sindur, is because there was nearly a fortnight for the Pakistanis to prepare for this inevitable response on the part of India. I'm worried that even though the physical destruction of much of the terror training camps occurred, that many of the minds behind that terror were able to escape. That's also a pattern we've seen elsewhere. So ultimately, I see this as just the beginning. But what I will use as barometer isn't simply the BBC. The BBC is a lost cause anyway. What I want to see is Pakistan lose their $1 billion at the International Monetary Fund meeting on May 9th. And I'd like to see other sanctions applied to Pakistan. No more moral equivalency, please.
So FATF listing or the FATF review comes up in June. The IMF bailout package and the meeting to consider that $1 billion bailout are part of the $7 billion deal IMF package is on the 9th. How do you think Bharat should calibrate its response? What should we as a nation, if I may ask as an Indian citizen or as a journalist, what should India do, Michael Rubin?
Look, India's got to stand firm. There's no moral equivalence here. India was the victim of terrorism, period. And that message, never assume that message is getting through. That message needs to be repeated again and again and again, because in Europe, in the United States, we are so insulated from the threat of terrorism coming across a border like the Pakistan line of control that we simply don't understand it. Never, I mean, when it comes to the United States and even to some extent Western Europe, history now occurs in 4-year tranches. It's not decades long. We don't understand the background, yet arrogantly we are going to lecture to you. So India's got to show that it is prepared for any retaliation. Behind the scenes, this is where diplomacy comes into play. When Secretary of State and Acting National Security Advisor Marco Rubio is calling India's National Security Advisor, is calling Pakistan's Acting National Security Advisor, that's going to be the channel for de-escalation. That's going to be the channel to convey the message to Pakistan, we're willing to go all the way, and you need to step down. You need to back off. That's where we need to be right now. The other concern I have is if we self-deter, if we're so afraid of where a conflict might end up, that we end up not engaging in that conflict in response to terrorism, that actually provides a green light to further terror. India can't be afraid to use its arms in order to defend its citizens. That is the job of any democracy. And if I may, Prime Minister Modi is doing a good job at avenging the deaths of those who died at Pahalgam.
But should this stop with Operation Sindur? Should Bharat stop with Operation Sindur, or should there be a follow-through? And that is that's broken into three phases: the short term or the near term, the mid term, and the long term.
First of all, it's Pakistan's decision whether this ends with Operation Sindur. The fact of the matter is, Pakistan is in the wrong, and if Pakistan chooses to continue this just means that the pain on Pakistan needs to become much greater until Pakistanis make the right decision. Now, once you have a deconfliction of active military conflict, that doesn't mean that the terror infrastructure should get a full pass. If, again, we look at the history of Israel, after, for example, the 1972 Munich Olympics attacks, what Israel did was hunt down every single person that was responsible for those attacks. And that's going to be, in the medium term, something which India is going to need to start to do. If you order a terrorist attack on Indian citizens, you should not ever sleep well, nor should anyone ever get into a car with you, because that car ride could be your last.
Well, that's a very, very strong pattern of messaging, and that blueprint needs to be followed. Michael Rubin, please stay on. I'm just going to bring in our other guests, Major General Ian Cardozo and Professor Brahma Chelani. Thank you for your patience. Major General Ian Cardozo, you've fought multiple wars against the same dushman, this enemy, and they say this is their fitrat. Ye maar kha ke bhi ek baar wapas aate hain. They come back. No matter how much time they take, they come back. So how should be the messaging from Bharat this time that they don't dare to do that again?
See, as far as our message is concerned, I think Pakistan has accepted Operation Sindur as putting them in their place. The message is, what Pakistan starts, India will finish. That is the message which should go to Pakistan each and every time. Number two, Pakistan appears to be in the mood to step back. No one wants a war, least of all India, and no one wants the war to continue. However, we need to understand that Pakistan terrorism will never end. Terrorism is, all the terrorists have not been killed by Operation Sindur, and terrorism is an idea. Therefore, that idea will continue in a place like Pakistan and the minds of such people. What we need to do also is that if we need to consider Pakistan's offer to step back and decide what we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again. In addition, we need to ensure that Brahma Chelani is on board. I have great respect for his stance on the IWT. We need to ensure that we walk out of the IWT. Can we walk out of the IWT? There are other concerns which are also to be considered. However, we need to change the contents of the IWT to our own advantage. We need to also understand that we are on our own. As the previous speaker has said, the West is looking at Pakistan and India in the same framework. That's not true. We are the victim, and they are the people who are striking. They cannot consider us on the same level, but they are doing so, and they will always do so. So therefore, we are on our own. We should always be ready for the future. Today, my काम वाली बाई said, साहब आज हॉर्न बजेगा. तो ऐसे हॉर्न बजेगा किस लिए? पाकिस्तान और इंडिया हमारा देश लड़ाई करेगा. तो ऐसे बजने का क्या होगा? मालूम नहीं साहब. So the question is, are the people of India today prepared for an all-out war if and ever it takes place? We need to ensure that every citizen of India understands that they are equally responsible for India's security. And
Yes,
they need to be
that's a collective sense of nationhood and responsibility towards the nation that we as citizens need to have and we need to be aware of. This is the first time since 1971 that the sirens will go off even in a mock drill. The former Air Chief is with us, RKS Bhaduria ji. Thank you for your time again. Jai Hind. What happens next? Many are saying, and I'm speaking to experts, they are saying Bharat must follow through. Even if there is a pause in kinetic action, we should not stop on the offensive. We should not get our foot off the pedal. But how do you anticipate this playing out? Because now the ball is in Pakistan's court.
Yes, the ball is in Pakistan court. I think the targets that were chosen have all been hit. They've been successfully damaged. The desired level of battle damage assessment would have got done. So the ball is in Pakistan court. They'll be observed very closely. I think the defense forces, all three, would have gone to a higher operational level of readiness to face whatever next step that gets taken. And look at the way escalation is going to happen. It would depend on what Pakistan does now, and it is my feel that Pakistan would respond for their own domestic reasons and for their own optics. And when that happens, depending upon the nature of that attack and the kind of targets that they choose to hit and the kind of damage that they target, our focus should be to minimize that, to defend effectively any such act on part of Pakistan, and thereafter take our own action. So there would be some action from their side, and we would need to really decide what next step we want to do, depending upon what happens next.
The Pak PMO has, in its statement, has claimed that they have downed 5 of our aircraft, including UAVs and aircraft. That's what their claim is. They claim civilians have been targeted by our armed forces. And the last one is they've authorized their military to take corresponding action. How do you interpret this?
Yeah, so their claims, I don't know till we get our own information. They always start claiming and this claim about civilians being attacked, etc., and telling their army to take action. Very clearly, we have seen the videos that have come out. We have seen the target information and some of the information that was shared in the morning brief. It's very clear that those targets that were shown, they've been hit very precisely. Even the photographs and videos coming out of Pakistan have indicated that those buildings have been hit. So there is no question of some civilian buildings getting hit around it and some civilians, so to say, from that perspective, being casualties. That could be the narrative. I think the world would stop listening to their narrative. The world leaders need to ask them what this extensive infrastructure where terrorists were basing their training and their indoctrination, etc., was doing under their nose, and why was it not being tackled? So I don't think their narrative will sell this narrative that they were not behind Pahalgam and they are not giving support to terrorism will fly anymore. Let us see what happens. They can give a free hand to their army. That is.
Chief, as per your Shatru Bodh, your understanding of the enemy's mindset, what could be the possible targets? Where could they want to scope out a face saver?
See, we had a clear strategy that we would strike only terrorist targets. And we had terrorist targets which were identified and we struck. They don't have any such targets on our side. So they would respond to striking, I feel, some military targets. And if they think rationally, I think they would figure in or feature in some level of de-escalation in this process. But that's expecting too much. I have a feeling the initial response may not be that rational. They would behave irrationally and will attempt to make some reasonable damage to some of the military targets. So we would need to really take action very strongly to any such attempts from Pakistani side. We need to be prepared. And depending upon what really pans out in terms of what targets get hit and what kind of damage, that will dictate our action. So for one, we need to be fully operationalized, deployed, which I'm sure has happened, and need to, take action on whatever action that Pakistan takes, and thereafter, again, decide in a very strong and robust manner what further course of action is required. There would be, from our side, I'm sure, a very rational thought on how we want to de-escalate the situation. Till that starts happening on the other side, the de-escalation would not materialize in total. So let us see how it comes out.
Do you believe the Bharat establishment, the government, and also the people have a stomach for this to play out or draw for a longer duration? How long do you see this current face-off with Pakistan going on?
See, the core question is Pahalgam acceptable? I think across the board in the nation, in one voice, everybody has said it is unacceptable. So there is no question of, once you take such robust action for terrorist targets like this and at this magnitude and scale, there's no question of not having stomach to face the escalation or going the full way if required. So the defense forces would be ready, and I don't have any element of doubt as to the extent to which they will go in case Pakistan wants to escalate it further. There would be no problem or no hesitation from our side. It would be largely in Pakistan's interest to de-escalate this, more than our interest. Once we take this action, we are ready for whatever happens.
Right.
But Pahalgam is unacceptable. It will have to stop. This cannot go on.
So the message is writ large there that Pahalgam is unacceptable and this will have to stop. Air Chief Arkez Bhadoria, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quickly getting a reaction from Major General Ian Cardozo before I bring in Brahmachalani and also the Kawal Sibalji. Major General Ian Cardozo, identified, track, punish was the promise. Identified, tracked, punished. But Pahalgam is unacceptable. That's what the Air Chief says. You agree with that sentiment? What do we as a nation need to do?
I agree with whatever has been said.
General Saab, I'm going to request you to please pause. We got fresh visuals coming from South Block. The ambassadors, after their briefing with the Foreign Secretary, are leaving nations, including Russia, Mauritius, and some of the other countries have come there for a briefing. Siddhant is joining us live. Yes, Siddhant.
Well, that's right, Anand. In fact, we don't have an official word, but yes, we can say, perhaps we can confirm for our viewers that the briefing of Foreign Secretary has just got concluded. And in fact, right in my frame, you can see Russian Ambassador Denis Alipov, and standing right next to him is Chinese Ambassador. I don't know whether video journalist Raveen Kumar is able
we have
to
the visuals.
Give shots of these two envoys. Yes, Anand. So, these two envoys have just walked out of the South Block. Perhaps they were the first ones to get inside. And in fact, the other senior officials from Ministry of External Affairs could also be seen in the backdrop. This is the second time, Anand, Foreign Secretary, has briefed foreign envoys. In fact, right after the Pahalgam terror attack, he briefed, and that perhaps helped India to get global support. And same exercise has again been put in place by the Indian side. In fact, the UNSC member countries, both permanent and non-permanent members, have been called in to South Block for the briefing by the Foreign Secretary. And remember, Anand, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri perhaps is a person who plays a very significant role as far as developments in last 2 weeks are concerned. In fact, he was the first one to brief Prime Minister Modi when he returned from Jeddah. Then he was also very much in the Situation Room yesterday when Operation Sindur was going on. And in fact, now he has called all these envoys here in the national capital at South Block headquarters of Ministry of External Affairs for the briefing. And in fact, I could see some other envoys also walking out. In fact, Russian envoy Denis Alipov and Chinese envoy, they both are waiting for their car. In fact, the Chinese envoy's car has just arrived, and the other envoys are also there. They are also coming out of the South Block office of Ministry of External Affairs. So very, very significant briefing, Anand, perhaps being done by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, who plays a very, very important role in the developments that took place in last 2 weeks.
What these ambassadors, what these envoys go back and report, and what are the calibrated positions some of these nations take, and is there a shift or variance in any of the positions of any of these nations in the days to come? We'll keep close eye on that. But in the meantime, the Global Times has been now schooled by the Indian Embassy in China. The Indian Embassy has replied to Global Times saying that China must recommend verifying facts and cross-examination of sources before pushing out this kind of disinformation. That's what the Global Times has been schooled by the Indian Embassy there. This is with respect to claims being put out by the Global Times that the Pakistan military has downed 2 of our aircraft. And the images that were put out or shared have now been called out. The fact-checking happening, saying that as per as Operation Sindur and claiming that aircrafts have been downed, this is just an attempt, brazen attempt to mislead the public. The fact-check has brought out and it's quoting the PIB fact-check that says that one aircraft is actually a MiG-29 that crashed earlier and the other one is a MiG-21. Both of them are were not in employ or in service or pressed into service for Operation Sindur at all. This is a MiG-29 fighter jet that crashed in Rajasthan in September 2024, and the other one is from Punjab 2021, a MiG-21 Indian Air Force fighter jet. So clearly, Siddhant, and then a whole list of what the actual facts are and what has been put out in the actual official briefing by the government. That's been shared by the Indian Embassy.
Well, that's right, Anand, and it's very rare that when Indian Embassy does fact-check of Global Times. Perhaps we have reported multiple times that how Global Times to Pakistani narrative, perhaps they believe more in Pakistani narrative. And this time around again, there was this story which they published about, this is a fake news, in fact, by putting out the old images showing crashed aircraft being recirculated. This is being recirculated in various forms in the current context of Operation Sindur. In fact, many Pakistani handles have been doing it since last so many hours. And in fact, now Global Times have curated this story on the basis of the Twitter handles of some of the Pakistani Twitter handles. So it was important for the Indian side to fact check them. And perhaps a few hours back, PIB had also come up with a fact check of the same story which was going on everywhere on the social media platform. Right. So now India in Beijing, perhaps the Indian mission's Twitter handle has fact-checked Global Times.
Well, let's hope that India in London or India in the United Kingdom also fact-check some of the British media, as Kanwal Sibbalji was just making a point there. Kanwal Sibbalji, your thoughts on this briefing of the nations? Will there be a shift in position? What does the diplomatic challenge now over the next 24, 48 hours or the coming week?
A few points. One is that you had asked me about the significance of vermilion. I don't have to tell Sindur, I don't have to tell your readers that this is a symbol of victory. When in traditional times, when our warriors went out, the vermilion was put on their forehead by their wife or mothers or sisters. So I think it is very aptly chosen as a symbol of victory. Number two, the BBC this morning led with this information that Pakistan claims it has shot down 4 fighters. No effort to check the veracity of this, but create a narrative. Number 3, with regard to your specific question. Yes, we are doing our briefing this side, but let's not forget the Pakistani Foreign Office is also briefing the local ambassadors. So reports will go from ambassadors in New Delhi to their headquarters, and reports will go from Pakistan by foreign ambassadors to their headquarters, and then it's for the headquarters, the foreign office of the country is concerned, to actually see what reports are coming in, and then it will depend on how much value they attach to relations with India and with Pakistan to determine their line as to what they should say publicly.
Ji.
So therefore, the fact that we have briefed them could be very persuasive, no doubt. But the government's concern may not want actually to publicly support the Indian line, because it's a question of diplomacy and geopolitics and the interwoven relations that these countries have with various countries and regional blocs and everything else. Therefore, we should not actually believe that our story is going to determine the narrative. There will always be a call for restraint, of lowering tensions, of de-escalation, and even our friends would say that because they also don't know in what direction this would go.
Yeah.
Even J.D. Vance sort of said that, suggesting that you can take some action, but it should not lead to a regional conflict.
Correct.
What does that mean? That China should not get involved in this. So they will try and do that, even if privately they sympathize with us and support our position. At the end of the day, we have to be confident that we have a case. We have been victims of terrorism for years.
Right.
And the fact is that whatever we've done in the past, whatever limited action we have taken, whatever support we've got from the international community has not deterred Pakistan for pursuing terrorism as a matter of their national policies towards India.
They've blamed the West. They've blamed the West and the war in Afghanistan for a lot of it, and Pakistan being the home raid or the ground.
And the last point is that Pakistan military will face immense pressures domestically. It will be tremendous loss of face if the Pakistan military does not react. And it has to react in a manner in which they can show that they have caused damage. And it can only be, as I said earlier, and the former Air Chief has said, it has to be military targets. And therefore, onus will be on us, depending on what they do, how much damage they cause, because we have air defense systems, as to how we should react. We will have to react. Finally, and the last point which needs to be mentioned is that the Pakistani themselves are propagating how much damage has been done by our missile system, which is very different from what they said when we had earlier operations, where they mocked us. The reason they're doing it is they're giving it a religious twist. If you see what their spokesmen are saying, that masjids has been attacked, and they're showing the masjids being targeted and damaged. So they actually want to win domestic sympathy from Islamist groups that India is targeting masjid, religious structures. So this is a very devious kind of propaganda that Pakistan.
Well, this is this is from the Hamas playbook, that you have a civilian, a very benign front, but at the back of it, or at the real face is far more devious and dangerous. So they've used hospitals and health centers as training camps. They've used markas or as centers of religious learning to become terror training camps. They've used schools for terror training. So a lot of this is copying the Hamas template all across these terror camps from Muzaffarabad right down to Bahawalpur. We'll try and see if we got Brahmachalani ji with us. We've not been able to go across to him. Lots of the flow of news. Brahmachalani ji will be joining us just around the time we get more breaking news coming through. Bharat is also closely monitoring the flow of water through the IWD as part of the gates that we had shut, and how much water we can retain and how much we need to allow. Government sources indicate that 28,000 cuseck of water has been released recently by Bharat, leading to a flood-like situation in the lower areas of Pakistan. So this tap off, tap on, this is the kind of strategy that we are employing. Payal Mehta joining us with more. Yes, Payal.
Even after the strikes that we've really conducted, if anybody thinks that India is done with it and India will go back to becoming the good cop to Pakistan, that is not going to be the case. That's going to be a long battle for Pakistan to win our love and win our support back, Anand. That's the message that the Indian government is sending. In fact, just about yesterday, we're given to understand 28,000 cusacks water was released into Pakistan, and has actually forced Pakistan to issue a flood alert. And before that, there was also a complaint saying that the taps were running dry as far as Pakistan is concerned. there has been a consolidated effort that the Indian government is trying to put. They're going to be monitoring the situation every now and then. It's going to be a calibrated effort because India will now decide when they want to release water for Pakistan and when they don't want to release water for Pakistan. They will not come under any pressure. We've already been reporting that multiple meetings have taken place.
Right.
Multiple meetings are expected to take place in the next couple of days also with the power minister, with the Jal Shakti minister and of course the home minister. And of course officers are keeping a tap on it 24/7. And India will not let anything come easy Pakistan's way. No matter what Pakistan does, no matter how much it cries foul, India is willing to take the battlefront on Pakistan at every front. Terror being the only point that actually separates the two nations and will continue to separate till they don't behave themselves.
Strong messaging there, Major General Ian Cardozo. So even if the kinetic option, there is a little bit of a pause, the non-kinetic options we'll continue to use to our advantage till the time Pakistan becomes a terror-free nation or stops fomenting terror on our soil. Fair call. And we should. Do you also feel some of these things should have been employed as a strategy long back?
I agree, absolutely. This should have been we don't have a strategy. We only react to situations. We need to have a vision of where India should stand 10 years down the line, politically, economically, militarily, technologically, socially, and make our vision accordingly. The question that you asked has not been answered. Does the Indian citizen have the stomach to accept the fallout of war? I think we need to think about this very seriously.
What is going to make us believe that we need to do this? What needs to be done? The Israelis are very clear. They perhaps October 7 was the tipping point for the Israelis to say it's now or never. We got to finish this terror hydra that is the Hamas, and we need to rid Gaza of this ilk and this lot. Has Pahalgam triggered that within the Bharatiya senses?
I think it has. But what we need to also understand is that in a war situation, India will be alone. We've got Pakistan, we've got China, and now we also have Bangladesh. They're going to cooperate. The question is, will anybody stand by us? No one will stand by us. The only country which will stand by us was Russia, and they are now pushed into China's arms by America. Perhaps Israel is the only country which might support us. I don't know how far. But we need to understand that we need to prepare for the future war in every possible aspect. We have to prepare, otherwise we are going to be in trouble. We need to understand that this is a very serious situation. It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen next year, but it will happen at some time. We need to be prepared for that day.
Right. Now, we've got more news coming through. Responding to Bharat's airstrikes, Turkey has condemned the action, saying that it would raise the risk of an all-out war. Turkey further called upon parties to exercise common sense and refrain from unilateral actions and measures to reduce tensions in the area. Siddhant is with us. Siddhant, so Turkey continues to use a tone which is very clearly supporting Pakistan.
Yes, that's right, Anand, but there is nothing surprising in that. In fact, we all are aware of Turkey's position and in fact its inclination towards Pakistan. Perhaps Turkey has always chosen sides. And in fact, it was Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who perhaps for the first time announced that Turkey supports public of Pakistan. Perhaps I very clearly remember those were his words. And in fact, after that, there was a naval ship which also arrived in Pakistan from Turkey. In fact, they have a very deep defense cooperation. And as I said, there is nothing surprising in that. And in fact, we were expecting this kind of statement coming from Turkey. It has been a traditional position of Turkey from a very, very long time. And in fact, Anand, I could also predict names of two other countries. One is Azerbaijan and other is Malaysia. Perhaps they will also come up with the similar statements condemning, Operation Sindur.
Kamal Sibalji, your thoughts? Is this something that is fait accompli? We'll have to accept this? We don't have Kawal Sibal. What we will try and do is quickly play out the entire briefing this morning. Vikram Misri, a Kashmiri Pandit, Foreign Secretary of Bharat, leading that briefing. And then we had Colonel Sophia Qureshi and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh leading the military operation briefing, how the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army, the armed forces, coordinated 21 drops across 9 targets over a period of just 25 minutes. That's how fast and swift and precise the execution was. Listen in.
On April 22, 2025, Pakistani and Pakistan-trained terrorists belonging to the Lashkar-e-Taiba carried out a savage attack on Indian tourists at Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir in India. They murdered 26 people, including one national of Nepal, causing the largest number of civilian casualties in a terrorist attack in India. Pakistan also has a well-deserved reputation as a haven for terrorists from around the world, with internationally proscribed terrorists enjoying impunity there. Earlier this morning, as you would be aware, India exercised its right to respond and preempt, as well as deter more such cross-border attacks. These actions were measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible.
यहाँ 6 से 7 मई 2025 की रात 1:05 से 1:30 बजे के बीच ऑपरेशन सिंदूर 22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम में हुए विभत्स आतंकवादी हमले के शिकार मासूम नागरिकों व उनके परिवारों को न्याय देने के लिए लॉन्च किया गया था। इस कार्रवाई में 9 टेररिस्ट कैंप्स को टारगेट किया गया और पूरी तरह से इसे बर्बाद किया गया।
9 terrorist camps were targeted and successfully destroyed. Over the last 3 decades, Pakistan has systematically built terror infrastructure. Well-known training camps are located, as you can see on the screen. They are distributed from Savai Nala in the north, counting to approximately 21, ending at Bhagalpur to the south.
जब तक आतंकवाद खत्म ना हो, इस तरह की घटनाएं खत्म ना हो, तब तक मात्र मैं नहीं कहूंगा कि भाई भारत सरकार पूरे वर्ल्ड को ही इसके अगेंस्ट खड़ा होकर के और इनको नेस्ता नाबूद कर देना चाहिए।
Definitely a lot of justice is there because the army people and air force people, they have done a lot of work and they have attacked the 9 terrorist hideouts and they killed.
शिव प्रताप जी शुक्ला, गवर्नर अरुणाचल प्रदेश, लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल कैवल्य परनाइक, गवर्नर राजस्थान श्री हरिभाऊ किशन राव बागड़े, चीफ मिनिस्टर अरुणाचल प्रदेश श्री पेमा खांडू, चीफ मिनिस्टर मिजोरम श्री लाल धोमा, लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर जम्मू एंड कश्मीर श्री मनोज सिन्हा जी, लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर लद्दाख ब्रिगेडियर डॉक्टर बीडी मिश्रा, विभिन्न राज्यों और यूटी से जुड़े सम्मानित जनप्रतिनिधिगण एवं अधिकारीगण, जनरल उपेंद्र द्विवेदी, चीफ ऑफ आर्मी स्टाफ श्री राजेश सिंह जी, डिफेंस सेक्रेटरी लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल रघु श्रीनिवासन, डीजी बॉर्डर रोड, बीआरओ के सभी कर्मयोगी एवं देवियों व सज्जनों, आप सभी जानते हैं कि आज हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी के मार्गदर्शन में हमारे भारत की सेना ने हम सभी भारतवासियों का मस्तक ऊंचा किया है। इसलिए मैं चाहता हूं कि एक बार अपने स्थान पर खड़े हो जाएं और मैं नारे लगाऊंगा। हमारे देश के सेना के जवानों के सम्मान में हम सभी बोलेंगे, भारत माता की, भारत माता की, भारत माता की। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। साथियों, जैसी कि आप सबको जानकारी है कि कल रात हमारी भारतीय सेनाओं ने अपने अद्भुत शौर्य और पराक्रम का परिचय देते हुए एक नया इतिहास रच दिया है। साथियों, भारत की सेना ने सटीकता, सतर्कता और संवेदनशीलता के साथ कार्रवाई की है। हमने जो लक्ष्य तय किए थे उन्हें ठीक समय, तय योजना के अनुसार सटीकता से उन्होंने ध्वस्त किया है और किसी भी नागरिक ठिकाने, सिविलियन पॉपुलेशन को जरा भी प्रभावित न होने देने की संवेदनशीलता भी हमारी सेना ने दिखाई है। यानी एक तरीके से देखा जाए तो हम कह सकते हैं एक तरीके की सटीकता, सतर्कता और मानवीयता यह हमारी भारत की सेना के जवानों ने दिखाई है, जिसके लिए मैं हमारे सेना के जवानों और अधिकारियों को पूरे देश की ओर से मैं साधुवाद देता हूं और सेना को संपूर्ण संबल प्रदान करने के लिए अपने प्रधानमंत्री माननीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी को भी मैं साधुवाद देता हूं। मित्रों, हमने हनुमान जी के उस आदर्श का पालन किया है जो उन्होंने अशोक वाटिका उजाड़ते समय किया था। जिन मोहि मारा तिन मोहि मारे। हमने केवल उन्हीं को मारा जिन्होंने हमारे मासूमों को मारा। साथियों, प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी के नेतृत्व में हमारी सेनाओं ने ऑपरेशन सिंदूर लॉन्च करके पहले की तरह ही इस बार भी आतंकियों को ट्रेनिंग देने वाले कैंप्स को तबाह करके करारा जवाब दिया है। भारत ने अपनी सरजमी पर हुए हमले का जवाब देने के लिए अपने राइट टू रेस्पॉन्ड का इस्तेमाल किया है और हमारी यह कार्रवाई बेहद सोच समझकर सधे हुए तरीके से की गई है। आतंकियों के हौसले पस्त करने के उद्देश्य से यह कार्रवाई महज उनके कैंप्स और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तक ही सीमित रखी गई है। मैं पुनः हमारे आर्म्ड फोर्सेस के शौर्य को मैं नमन करता हूं। साथियों, आज बॉर्डर रोड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के 66वें फाउंडेशन डे पर आपके बीच उपस्थित होना मेरे लिए गौरव का विषय है और यह खुशी की बात है कि आज इस इम्पॉर्टेंट डे पर बीआरओ द्वारा निर्मित 50 इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स का उद्घाटन करने का अवसर भी हमें प्राप्त हो रहा है। मैं आप सभी का आभार व्यक्त करता हूं कि आपने मुझे यहां आमंत्रित किया है। साथियों, किसी भी संस्थान के लिए उसका फाउंडेशन डे यह बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण हुआ करता है। वैसे भी 65 वर्षों की आपकी जो यात्रा रही है वो बेहद गौरवशाली रही है। इसलिए आज का दिन उस गौरवमयी यात्रा को याद करने का दिन है। इसके साथ साथ यह दिन ठहर कर सोचने का भी दिन होता है कि अपनी अब तक की यात्रा में हमने क्या क्या हासिल किया है और यह हमारी अब तक की कार्य प्रणाली का विश्लेषण करने का भी यह दिन है। साथ ही यह एनालिसिस करने का भी दिन है कि भविष्य में हमारी राह क्या होनी चाहिए। साथियों, मैं देख पा रहा हूं कि वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंसिंग के माध्यम से देश के अलग अलग क्षेत्रों से हमारे कई साथी जुड़े हुए हैं। अक्सर हम उद्घाटन के अवसर पर बड़ी बड़ी संस्थाओं का और बड़ी बड़ी एजेंसीज का नाम तो लेते हैं, परंतु ऐसे कई कर्मयोगी हैं जो पर्दे के पीछे रहकर काम करते हैं। किसी प्रोजेक्ट को पूरा करने में उनका योगदान भी बेहद महत्वपूर्ण होता है। इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि आज का दिन उनके योगदान को एक्नॉलेज करने और एप्रिशिएट करने का भी दिन है। साथियों, आज जम्मू कश्मीर, लद्दाख, सिक्किम, मिजोरम, अरुणाचल प्रदेश, पश्चिम बंगाल और राजस्थान में कई प्रोजेक्ट्स का उद्घाटन हुआ है। कहने को तो यह हम सारे फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हैं, लेकिन मैं इन्हें सिर्फ फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ही नहीं समझता। हमें जो सड़कें दिखती हैं, जो पुल दिखते हैं, वह सिर्फ दो स्थानों को जोड़ने वाले नहीं होते हैं, बल्कि वह लोगों के दिलों को जोड़ने वाले होते हैं। इन प्रोजेक्ट से राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा को तो मजबूती मिलती ही है, साथ ही साथ यह प्रोजेक्ट इन सभी रीजन्स को इकोनॉमिक प्रॉस्पेरिटी को भी बढ़ावा देते हैं। यह तमाम प्रोजेक्ट इन क्षेत्रों में ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, टूरिज्म और इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी को बढ़ावा देंगे, जिससे निश्चित रूप से यहाँ के निवासियों की आय में वृद्धि होगी, उनकी क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ में भी इम्प्रूवमेंट होगा और इन क्षेत्रों में समृद्धि आएगी, यानी प्रॉस्पेरिटी आएगी। साथियों, मुझे बताया गया कि आज जिन इंफ्रा प्रोजेक्ट्स की शुरुआत की गई है, इनकी टोटल कॉस्ट लगभग 1900 करोड़ रुपए के आसपास की है। मुझे लगता है कि यह केवल उनकी नॉमिनल वैल्यू पर है। इसकी असली वैल्यू है वह तो हम आंक भी नहीं सकते। इन सड़कों के माध्यम से जब कोई बच्ची स्कूल जाएगी और अपना भविष्य बनाएगी तो उसके इम्पैक्ट का आकलन भी हम नहीं कर सकते। इन ब्रिजेस के माध्यम से जब यहां एम्बुलेंसेज दौड़ेंगी और समय पर लोगों को इलाज होगा, उसकी वैल्यू को भी नहीं आंका जा सकता है। जब इन सड़कों के माध्यम से विभिन्न संस्कृति के लोग आपस में जुड़ेंगे या फिर एक दूसरे से जो कुछ सीखेंगे, उसकी वैल्यू कोई भी आंक नहीं सकता है। जब इन टनल्स के माध्यम से यहां के किसानों द्वारा उगाए गए फूल, फल, सब्जियां इत्यादि दूसरे क्षेत्रों में आसानी से पहुंचेंगे, उसका जो आर्थिक और सामाजिक प्रभाव यहां के किसानों पर पड़ेगा, उसकी वैल्यू, उसकी कीमत कोई भी नहीं आंक सकता। साथियों, मैं इन प्रोजेक्ट्स की डिटेल देख रहा था। मैंने देखा कि इनमें छोटे से लेकर बड़े रोड्स, टनल्स और ब्रिजेज हैं। कुछ मीटर से लेकर सैकड़ों किलोमीटर तक इनकी लंबाई है। हालांकि उनकी लंबाई से कोई खास फर्क नहीं पड़ता है। कोई पुल अगर छोटा है, कोई सड़क यदि छोटी है, तो इससे कोई खास फर्क नहीं पड़ता, क्योंकि दुनिया की लंबी से लंबी जो यात्राएं होती हैं वह सिर्फ एक छोटे से रास्ते से ही शुरू होती हैं। इसलिए इन प्रोजेक्ट्स की कीमत, इनकी वैल्यू सिर्फ इस बात से नहीं आंकी जा सकती क्या फाइनेंशियली या फिजिकली कितना बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट है और यह कितना छोटा प्रोजेक्ट है। असल में इनकी असली कीमत इस बात से है कि यह कितने परिवारों को जोड़ रही हैं, कितने लोगों की संस्कृति को, उनके रहन सहन को आपस में करीब ला रही हैं, कितने लोगों की आर्थिक और सामाजिक समृद्धि, इकोनॉमिक और सोशल प्रॉस्पेरिटी में अपना ये योगदान दे रही हैं। यह प्रोजेक्ट्स लोहे, कंक्रीट या कोलतार से बनी हुई एक संरचना भर नहीं है, बल्कि यह एक कमिटमेंट है, यह एक प्रतिबद्धता है सीमावर्ती क्षेत्र के विकास का। यह एक रिजॉल्व है, यह एक संकल्प है बॉर्डर एरियाज में क्वालिटी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्ड करने का। यह एक दृढ़ निश्चयता का डिटर्मिनेशन है लोगों के दिलों को जोड़ने का। इसलिए मैंने कहा कि ये प्रोजेक्ट्स इनवैल्यूएबल हैं, इनकी कीमत का आकलन नहीं किया जा सकता। साथियों, प्राचीन काल से ही मार्ग मानव सभ्यता के विकास में बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाते आए हैं। मार्गों की महत्ता हमारे इतिहास में हमेशा से रही है। जब आप मानवता का इतिहास पलट कर देखेंगे तो आप ये पाएंगे कि ट्रांसपोर्टेशन रूट्स ने कितना इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले किया है। इतिहास बताते हैं कि सिविलाइजेशन थ्राइव हुई तो उसके पीछे रूट्स और राजमार्गों का बहुत बड़ा योगदान रहा है। कला, साहित्य, संस्कृति और विज्ञान का प्रचार प्रसार एक क्षेत्र से दूसरे क्षेत्र तक इन्हीं के माध्यम से फैलता है। यदि मैं भारत के संदर्भ में बात करूं तो मुझे यहां के दो इंपॉर्टेंट रूट्स के नाम स्वाभाविक रूप से याद आ रहे हैं। आप शायद उत्तरापथ और दक्षिणापथ के बारे में जानते होंगे या सुना होगा। उत्तरापथ और दक्षिणापथ हमारे इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट के डिफरेंट रीजन्स को एक दूसरे से जोड़ने वाले धागे की तरह हैं। आप सोचिए, हजारों साल पहले जब संचार के इतने तेज साधन नहीं थे, तब आइडियाज और कल्चर, विचार और संस्कृति एक जगह से दूसरी जगह कैसे पहुंचते थे। पांड्य साम्राज्य का मोती और मदुरई का कपास आखिर मगध के पाटलिपुत्र में कैसे बहुत प्रसिद्ध हो गया। राजकुमार सिद्धार्थ से भगवान बने महात्मा बुद्ध की शिक्षाएं कावेरी पट्टनम तक कैसे पहुंच गईं। संगम युग की मणिमैखली की चर्चा कश्मीर तक कैसे फैल गई। जब भारत में मॉडर्न पॉलिटिकल यूनिटी का कंसेप्ट भी नहीं आया था, तब से इन रूट्स ने सभ्यता और संस्कृति के विकास और आदान प्रदान में बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई है। यदि हम महात्मा बुद्ध के बाद के इतिहास पर भी नजर डालें, तब भी हमें यह देखने को मिलता है कैसे दूसरे क्षेत्रों से आकर लोगों ने भारत की संस्कृति को समृद्ध किया और भारत की संस्कृति से भी उन्होंने बहुत कुछ सीखा भी है। इन मार्गों का महत्व तब भी इतना ज्यादा था कि व्यापार के लिए समर्पित सड़कें बनाई जाती थी। आप जब सिल्क रूट के बारे में जानते हैं, आप सभी को मालूम है सिल्क रूट के बारे में, जिसने एक तरह से पूरे एशिया और मध्य यूरोप तक को कवर कर लिया था। भारत से भी उस सिल्क रूट का एक बड़ा हिस्सा होकर गुजरता था, जिससे न सिर्फ सामान बल्कि संस्कृति और विचार का भी एक्सचेंज, आदान प्रदान यह होता था। एशिया और यूरोप के बीच कल्चरल एक्सचेंज, सांस्कृतिक आदान प्रदान में भी सिल्क रूट का बहुत बड़ा योगदान रहा है। साथियों, सिर्फ स्थलीय मार्ग का ही नहीं बल्कि जलीय मार्ग का भी ह्यूमन सिविलाइजेशन, मानव सभ्यता में एक बहुत बड़ा महत्व रहा है। मेसोपोटामिया की सभ्यता के साथ हमारा व्यापार जलीय मार्ग से ही होता था। अरब के जो व्यापारी आते थे वह भारत में जलीय मार्ग से ही आते थे। इन रूट्स का असर हमारे संस्कृति पर, हमारे परंपराओं पर और हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था पर तो पड़ा ही, साथ ही साथ इन रूट्स ने दुनिया को कई सारी नई चीजें भी सीखने को दी हैं। आप में से बहुत से लोग इस बात को जानते भी होंगे कि मानसून की हवाओं का जो कंसेप्ट है और उसको सबसे पहले अरब के यात्रियों ने खोजा था, और वह कंसेप्ट तब खोजा गया था जब वह जलीय मार्ग से भारत में आते और जाते थे। इसी प्रकार भारत में हुई न्यूमेरिक्स, नंबर जो होते हैं, की खोज ने भी पहले अरब और बाद में यूरोप तक का रास्ता तय किया था। साथियों, प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में जब से हमारी सरकार आई है, तब से हमारे प्रधानमंत्री का इस बात पर विशेष ध्यान रहता है कि सीमावर्ती इलाकों का कैसे अधिकतम विकास किया जाए। यह बताने की जरूरत नहीं है कि कैसे सीमावर्ती इलाकों को लंबे समय तक उसको उपेक्षित किया गया, कैसे एक लंबे समय तक वहां पर अच्छी क्वालिटी के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को छोड़िए, एक बेसिक क्वालिटी के भी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को भी नहीं पहुंचाया गया। परंतु आज स्थितियां बदली हैं। आज सीमावर्ती क्षेत्रों में सेफ, सिक्योर्ड एंड वाइब्रेंट लैंड बॉर्डर्स को इंश्योर करने के लिए हमने वाइब्रेंट विलेज इनिशिएटिव भी प्रारंभ किया हुआ है। देश भर में सड़कों के निर्माण की यदि मैं बात करूं, आज हम प्रतिदिन लगभग 35 किलोमीटर सड़कें बना रहे हैं, प्रतिदिन 35 किलोमीटर सड़कें बना रहे हैं। इसके अलावा भी हम बड़े स्तर पर कनेक्टिविटी को बढ़ावा दे रहे हैं। स्थितियां पहले की तुलना में कुछ इस प्रकार बदली हैं कि मुझे आए दिन बीआरओ के किसी न किसी कार्यक्रम में आकर सड़कों का, ब्रिजेस का, टनल्स का और ऐसे सैकड़ों प्रोजेक्ट का उद्घाटन करने का अवसर मिलता रहता है। साथियों, रक्षा मंत्री के रूप में मुझे बीआरओ द्वारा किए गए कामों को नजदीक से कई बार देखने का अवसर भी मिला है। पिछले कुछ वर्ष
Mahi sir, how?
He was personally monitoring Operation Sindoor. So PM was monitoring Operation Sindoor, so he was there, aware of what was going on and personally monitoring what was going on. So for some of the jibes that came at where is our Prime Minister and he's Gayab, etc., this is confirmation that he was right in the thick of it. And at the highest level of government, this Operation Sindoor was being monitored, it's been planned and it's also now been implemented. Yes, Group Captain Vinod.
Great point. So let me quickly finish about this loitering munition. Most of the loitering munition today has the capability to go up without any target. And once the target pops up, it keeps loitering. And once the target pops up, it will go and hit the target. Erstwhile loitering munitions were against the radars. Today, loitering munition can be against anything. Point number one. Point number two, and coming back to Anand, your point.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and it's time for a very, very special edition of Take 3. This time, Rahul Shivshankar, Zaka Jacob with us, and the only subject matter that we're going to speak about is that within a fortnight of Pahalgam, 22nd of April, there's been a strong retribution via Operation Sindur. 21 drops across 9 locations in 25 minutes between 1 and 1:30 a.m. in the wee hours of the 7th of May. This will be a red letter day because Bharat has told the world that no more Pahalgam. It will not be tolerated. Any act of terror on Bharatiya soil, there will be a huge punishment and a huge amount to pay. And the target has been the terror infrastructure. For decades, people have been asking, how is it that these jihadi tanzeems are proliferating in places like Muridke and Bahawalpur, and it's an open secret to everybody, and why nothing's been done about it? It's been done now. The infrastructure has been struck, and that perhaps, and in a precision manner, to do that at a length and breadth from POK to southern Pak province of Punjab, southern Punjab in Pakistan, is something which is unprecedented, never thought about. Zaka Jacob, Rahul Shivshankar, your first thoughts on what's happened, and then let's take the developments and what happens next. So let's try and talk about it.
Okay,
Yes, Rahul.
so look, you made a very interesting observation. You said, why wasn't it done before? I'll tell you why, because we were caught in a Cold War trap where we thought that fundamentally, if Pakistan has nukes, it has immunity. That many people, many regimes that came and went, turned the other cheek because they thought, well, this would lead to huge escalation, punishing escalation. Modi tested that doctrine for the first time in 2016 with the post-Uri surgical strikes. And from surgical strikes to Operation Sindur, he has called Pakistan's bluff. And at every stage, Balakot intervening, he has gone one up on the escalation ladder, so much so that he has scripted, in my words, the doctrine of fear and has rewritten the rules on retaliation in a nuclearized environment. I think that is fundamentally what has happened. And I think this is a textbook watershed moment for a large number of military strategists to actually study. Now, I'm not getting ahead of myself because the Pakistanis can respond.
Yeah.
And that will open up more space under the nuclear threshold. And then, once again, the ball will be in our court. Where can we go from here? I don't even want to think about it because thinking about escalation between two nuclear powers in a dyad in a nuclear dyad is not something that pleases anybody.
But nuclear...
It pushes you to the edge of Armageddon, closer. And of course, it only takes one silly mistake to inflict such a blow on humanity. But the point is, what we've done here is to tell Pakistan and all those generals who have been living in their patrician bungalows in Lahore, guys, you're going to have a sleepless night. You thought that you were insulated because you had these tin pot toys. Well, think about it twice. If we can strike 30 kilometers from your palatial bungalows, we can take out your biggest non-state actor. We can take out your biggest weapon, which is non-conventional, unconventional, which is the Lashkar-e-Taiba's headquarters. We can also hit you. So think twice.
Well, nuclear threat or the threat of this nuclear button cannot become a reason why we should suffer bleeding via 1,000 cuts. And I think that message has come across very, very clearly that we'll go up the escalation ladder. Now it's up to you what you're going to do.
But we did after the UPA.
Yeah.
You see, we did in 26-11. Unfortunately, we were so stilled by this threat,
I think
this nuclear blackmail.
Bharat was very different, not just as a political leadership, but where we were financially, where we were economically, where we were geopolitically. It was a different situation. Last decade and a half, there's been a shift, there's a change. We have far more depth in terms of our reserves, far more depth in terms of our arsenal, far more depth or perhaps far more range or width in terms of our geopolitical reach out and also our global status and our positioning. So there are a lot of things, and we've also learned lessons, Zaka. We've all of us have seen Balakot. 2019, and how Bharat's response was then, and how the swift retort happened, and Bharat was somewhere caught unawares, even though we defended ourselves well. But this time, and there was this whole thing about where is the message, where is the messaging, where is the information? A lot of things have been corrected this time around. Your thoughts first up on Operation Sindoor, because you are one of the first responders here at CNN News 18. So he's been doing, we're up at least 15 hours, we're not complaining about it, but he was one of the first to get into the studio. So let me ask you.
What time did you get in exactly?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
2 a.m.
So
2 a.m. I was in at 3. But go ahead,
you know, I think just to take off from what Rahul was saying, you know, what Modi has done, and Ambassador Kaju, when I was speaking to him in the afternoon, he came up with this theory. He said, this is the Modi doctrine. Now, what is the Modi doctrine? That if you hit innocent civilians, if there are terror attacks, and if you think you can get away with it, there is a cost to pay. So first with Uri, which of course was a hit on the brigade headquarters, then there was Pulwama, which was a hit on the CRPF Jawans, and now you had Pahalgam, in response to which you've had Operation Sindoor. With each of these, he has not just climbed the escalation ladder, but he's also hit further deeper inside Pakistan. So Uri, the response to Uri was surgical strikes across the LOC in Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir. With Balakot, the strike was inside Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. It was, you know, deep inside Pakistan. And today, what the defense establishment has shown, what the armed forces have shown, is that we can hit Pakistan not just inside POK, but deep inside Punjab. Hitting Pakistan inside Punjab, you know, I know this might sound like a bit of an exaggeration. It's a bit like hitting New York City. I mean, Punjab is to Pakistan what New York City is to the United States. I mean, the reason why 9/11 is etched in everybody's minds and memories is, of course, one, because of the images of the plane, you know, ramming into the World Trade Center, but also the fact that no one ever expected that there would be a terror attack in New York City. And that is the mindset or the mentality of the Pakistani generals, that, yeah, we can have some skirmishes in Kashmir, they can hit Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, there'll be skirmishes across the Durand line, you know, in the tribal areas and so on and so forth. Baluchistan will face unrest. But Punjab is the heart, and they will do anything and everything to protect Punjab. So today, I think, look, there is the threat of escalation, there is the threat of retaliation. We have to be realistic about it. India has shown its offensive power, and I think it's commendable. Balakot was one strike, one time. Today, Operation Sindoor is 9 locations, 21 strikes, all simultaneous, and all without crossing the line of control. I think that is a significant step up in terms of India's military prowess. And none of these strikes were detected by the air defense systems or by counter strikes from there. All of these strikes were successful. Now comes the hard part, which I think we all need to brace ourselves for, which we need to be aware of it, and we need to be certainly prepared for it. Not just at the level of the armed forces, we need to be prepared for it at the level of civil society. We were talking about these mock drills that are happening right now across the country in these 240 odd districts. But look, from the Pakistan military's point of view, the objective is, this is like you've gone in there and you've cut off the nose of General Munir. If somebody has his nose cut, then he's spited. He's not necessarily thinking in a rational way.
Right.
And the Pakistan army is not exactly known for rationality. So the spectre or the prospect or the threat of an irrational response is very much real. Yes, again, the Pakistanis will also go back to the drawing board, and what is their objective? For India, the objective was to show that if you hit civilians and if you segregate people by religion, kill them indiscriminately, there is a cost to pay.
Yeah.
We will hit you at all your terror launch pads, terror infrastructure, terror headquarters, and we will do it with a degree of, for want of a better phrase, impunity. Now, what is the objective for Pakistan? And specifically, I keep saying this again and again, I said this in the morning as well, it will boil down to General Asim Munir. For him, this is like his nose has been cut off.
Yeah.
He has to demonstrate visibly that his army is not hollowed out. His army is not a Kokla army, as they say. So to that extent, what will he do, and are we prepared to defend against that.
Well, for Asim Munir and the Pakistani rhetoric, very clearly they are trying to make it about religion. They are trying to say that mosques have been touched and trying to bring in the angle of civilians. But what the big play is that it's linked to mosque, linked to Islam. That's what it is. For Bharat, it is linked to terror infrastructure and attacking the terror infrastructure. So that's the variance in the narrative spinning around Shankar. And Asim Munir, if he is able to fuel this entire religion vitriol within him, within Pakistan, is someone may just give him a carte blanche to do something foolhardy. But frankly and practically, if you were to say, do you think the Pak army chief is caught in a bind? Damned if he does and damned if he doesn't.
Yes, I think
after what's happened, after Operation
Sindur. I think fundamentally there is a problem, and therefore the Pakistani state is trying to suggest that this was an attack on the Qaum. Nothing succeeds in Pakistan than Qaumi Ekta, as they say. You know, bringing everybody together. Right now, Pakistan is splintered as a society. Yes, the overriding religion is Islam, but whether we like it or not, tribal loyalties, and of course, various different sectarian loyalties are holding sway. So you have the Pashtuns, you have the Baloch, you have the Sindhis, you have the Punjabis, you then have the people in Kashmir, you know, Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir, all of them at variance. So he is trying to spin this narrative, and he did that even before, if you remember, positioning Pakistan as this culturally different beast, the original Muslim homeland in South Asia, in the hope that all these variegated, disparate parts were to come together. Now, after he's been hit, and after he's realized that perhaps his own credibility is at stake, the state is playing this card. Look, they've hit our mosques, they've hit the faithful, they've hit ordinary Muslims who are going about their lives, and we have to, as a society, now hit back at Hindu India. So he's trying, therefore, to win legitimacy. Look, a dictator is not there because either he has got there on merit or he's got there on support. He's got there through machinations. He's not supported by the people of Pakistan. Now he's creating a sort of narrative where the people of Pakistan organically swear their loyalty to him. And that's not going to happen easily. But having said that, as Zaka also says, the man has lost face. And the whole the shtick of the Pakistani army is that we are your defenders. If the Pakistani army becomes as effete as the political class, the people are going to say you're as bad.
Yeah, but somewhere,
So
but somewhere in the larger strategic interest for Bharat and for this region, the Pakistani army needs to be defanged. This is perhaps the right time for the Pakistan civilian group, the people to turn up and say enough of this army, because across the board the narrative is ye jo dehshatgardi hai iske piche vardi hai. So is it possible that someone like an Asim Munir gets ousted? Is it possible that there is an overturn and a churning that happens?
You know, I've seen Pakistani political history certainly since the late 80s. Every time there was a popular politician, remember Benazir Bhutto when she got elected first in the late 80s, was an extremely popular politician. Nawaz Sharif, when the coup happened against him in 1999, very, very popular. So the point is, you know, when it has come as a clash between the political class and the army, it's always the army that has won, including the most recent example, Imran Khan. Again, his popularity was sky high. He had named and shamed Asim Munir. You know, even the others, even when Nawaz Sharif was at loggerheads with General Musharraf, there was no naming and shaming. But Imran Khan named Asim Munir and said, this is the man who's responsible for all of these cases against me. Of course, he's now spending multi-year term in jail. So whenever it's been a clash between the political class and the army in Pakistan, it is always the army that has won. I just want to extend, you know, one point that Rahul made. See, coming into Pahalgam, coming into the speech that General Munir made to the Pakistan overseas citizens, you know, there was a lot of pressure under him, on him and also on his institution. They were really under the pump after the Jafar Express blast that happened, in which, you know, army personnel was singled out and killed. You know, just like in Pahalgam, Hindus were singled out and killed. In the Jafar Express killings, it was army personnel, uniformed personnel who were singled out and killed. That is a direct challenge to the authority of the army. Then you had this massive problem of over 1 million refugees, back and forth between the Afghan side and the Pakistan side. Again, seen as a complete breakdown.
And just before that, Zach, there was that whole PTI protest.
Exactly.
Where people
Exactly.
entered, the holy of holies. Can you believe it? They entered the homes and the compounds.
Of brigadiers, of
Yes.
corps commanders. I mean, you've never seen something like that. And that's because, fact of the matter is that Imran Khan was and continues to be, even today, I think, the most popular politician in Pakistan. And, his popularity versus Asim Munir, it was a no contest. So what does Munir do? This is the most favorite calling card of the Pakistan army. Every time, for General Musharraf, from Zia, for all of these generals, you try to rally around the flag, right? And in this case, as General Munir himself said, the Pakistani flag is not just a geographical entity, it's a religious entity, right? According to him, the words that he used, after Riyasat-e-Madina.
It's the land of the
it's
the pure.
The land of the pure. The only country that's been established for Muslims, according to him, was Pakistan. So this is an attempt for him to rally people around the flag. Forget about the fault lines of Balochistan and Sindh and what's happening in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Everybody becomes Muslim, everybody becomes Pakistani. This Operation Sindoor is a massive dent to that. Is a massive dent to the person who's sitting at the top of the pyramid as he's trying to rally all of these troops, as he's trying to rally these 240 million people around the flag. This is a direct sort of shot at the head and said that, look, the guy sitting at the top is not able to
Frankly,
do
the Pakistani government, the Pakistani establishment, and they should turn around and look at what's happened in just 25 minutes. In just 25 minutes, the amount of terror infrastructure that's been demolished and that's been destroyed across the length and breadth of Pak-occupied territory and Pak sovereign territory is such an embarrassment that Asim Munir should be booted out. So all his braggadocio, all his bluster, all of it comes a cropper. Look at this. This is something which would get the sitting army chief the boot. And this is a nation that's been in readiness for 13 days. It's a nation that's been red alert for 13 days.
The only way a sitting army chief gets the boot in Pakistan's history, is if there's a coup from within the establishment.
And they get.
It's never a politician sort of taking over the.
But there is one point I want to make, Anand,
in this case, look at the clerics. The clerics, you heard the soundbite from the clerics and about what was coming in from the masjids inside Pakistan. The clerics are not happy with the Wardi.
So let me throw a question back at you guys. Let me throw a question back at you guys. What was India's aim here? Let's go back a few steps. Right? Prime Minister Modi made it clear that we want to deter those that export terror, the foot soldiers and their handlers. Now, I used a term that Modi has rewritten the rules of retaliation. I don't believe as of now that this particular action has rewritten the rules of deterrence, of enforcing deterrence. Why? Because we ourselves have said we made a distinction between the people who nurture this terror ecosystem and the terrorists. We have made it very clear. And therefore, I believe that the Pakistani army still thinks that it still has that aura of invincibility intact, immunity, call it what you want to, impunity, and it can still hit back. Had we also taken out a couple of military establishments or the deep state establishments, the ISA headquarters, I don't know, some brigade command headquarters like they struck in Uri, etc., maybe they would have suddenly woken up and said, oh, okay, this will have costs and it will be borne by us. Forget about the people, these expendables that we nurture in us. I don't know, what is your view?
No, see, I'm just going by what's happened quickly, just bring this into conversation. There's been a National Assembly session in Pakistan. Speaker Sardar I.S. Sadiq. Now, this is what Shehbaz Sharif has actually said. He said a strong response has been given by the Pakistanis to Bharat. He's then said that the enemy tried to attack Pakistan under the cover of the night, but Pakistan army has responded to Bharat's wild attack and turned it into a Chandrat. So he's turning this entire embarrassment and this entire,
So is he
thrust
referring
into
to the cross LOC ceasefire violation?
No,
He's
trying to say all is well. He's trying to say Pakistan has done a fair job of defending itself. That's what he's telling the National Assembly.
I think also if you go back to the meeting that happened, the National Security Committee, which is the highest security decision-making body in Pakistan, I think that statement basically said that the army has been given a free hand to respond at a time and place
authorized
of its
free hand.
choosing.
See, there are three narratives there they pulled. One, they said that they've downed 5 of our aircraft, including UAVs. Second, they said it is civilians, including women and children, who've been killed. So that was the civilian aspect. The terrorists and terror centers suddenly became civilian establishment. And third is the fact that they said that the army has been authorized for a corresponding reaction or corresponding action to be taken. But from there, that was issued by the PMO. But from there, Shehbaz Sharif in the National General Assembly is saying women, children have been targeted, but we have given them a befitting response. Now, how do you read this?
Well,
is it a smokescreen where Pakistan political establishment is seen like playing it down, trying to de-escalate, saying "Humne kar liya, whatever we have done is our face saver"?
Deal with this whole thing, right? I mean, this whole thing about what was the difference in 2019 and what is the difference now? The off-ramp that people keep talking about.
Yeah.
In 2019, because of the circumstances and the eventual sort of, the falling down of Abhinandan Vartaman, wing commander.
He fell into their lap. Literally.
Yeah, and then, then the whole narrative had changed.
Yeah.
So that became an off-ramp for both parties, and India did not want to escalate. The Pakistanis said that, look, we have one of your guys, and the priority was to try and get him back. So that became a sort of face saver, an honorable exit for both sides. Right now, let's say, hypothetically speaking, if the Pakistanis wanted to have an off-ramp and if they thought, the off-ramp is the way to go, they would have concocted some story and done a press conference and shown this kind of evidence that, look, these are the wreckaged mangles of the aircraft that we brought down. These are the Indian fighter jets. We've responded and we've retaliated in a satisfactory fashion, and they would have taken that off-ramp. The fact that they've not done that, DG ISPR press conference do not have any reference
because both
to
sides have confirmed, Zaka, that the international border was not breached.
So
both sides have said that
if the mangles are there, then they can still make a show around it. At least if the intention was to use that as an off-ramp. The fact that they've not done that suggests to me that the people that we should be paying far more attention to are the guys in Rawalpindi, not so much the ones in Parliament, in the National Assembly in Islamabad. And Rawalpindi, so far, from whatever I saw of the DG ISPR's press conference, has also repeated that phrase, which I quoted from the NSE readout, which is that the army has been given the right to respond at a time and place of its choosing. Now, the point is this, that if you're Asim Munir and you're thinking, okay, here's a guy, here's your sworn enemy, here's the people, the very people you were referring to as fundamentally different from us just 2-3 weeks ago, coming and hitting you in your backyard, you have only two options. Either you take the off-ramp, create a bahana, create a drama, take that off-ramp if you don't want to escalate, or you have to escalate. I mean, that's just the only two options we have on the table.
And if we look at on our side, what's happening, the BSF is on red alert, CAPF, all leaves have been cancelled. The Home Minister calls an urgent meeting of all the Chief Ministers, Chief Secretary, DGPs of states,
all the border states.
With border states with Pakistan and also
Even in Nepal.
Also Nepal. So that meeting happens very clearly. The mock drills are on. There is a heightened level of preparedness in the border regions, especially they've been asked to evacuate civilians. Unfortunately, we've already lost 15 civilians as confirmed by the army. So that's a tough loss and that will hurt. So clearly there is going to be some reprisal, either tonight, tomorrow morning or tomorrow night. In the next 24 to 36 hours, something's got to give. Now, what is that going to be? And based on that, is there going to be an immediate acceleration or perhaps upping the ante by Bharat, where we will be quick on the counter and perhaps take the escalation ladder, go up the escalation ladder a little more, push Pakistan into an intense engagement, because that's going to really drain them out?
You see, Anand, you're right. But, there is one problem that Pakistan finds itself in. They can't be a like for like, because there are no terror camps on this side of the border. So, and this is where the problem, the dilemma for India comes in. That if we are attacked, then either it will be state targets, which could be infrastructure, maybe dams, I don't know.
No, dam
brigade
is an open
headquarters.
act of war. Dams is an open act of war.
Brigade headquarters, some military targets, or it could be civilians. And if it's civilians, then of course it's a complete escalation, even on the moral ladder. And that becomes
legal ladder. I mean,
legal, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. But even on the moral ladder, it becomes an untenable escalation. And India will have to then think of retaliating in the same mode. So Pakistan will probably factor that in. I think, if anything, and look, it's never good to second guess because we don't want to spread panic, etc. But it was interesting that the Home Minister called the Chief Minister of the state that also sort of borders Nepal. Is Pakistan considering using some of its own resources that might be sleeper cells, etc., in our country? I don't know. Well, there could be a possibility. It's not a country that plays fair. It's a dirty country that hits below the belt.
Yeah,
you can't access Nepal unless you go through China.
So that's right.
So that is occupied territory. The other thing is that the Pakistanis have shifted some of their fleet, that is their squadrons, to Skardu. So the Skardu airbase is jointly monitored between them and the Chinese. So if there is a leeway there that is given to them, is there a possibility from the other side something happens? We've got to be clear about all these possibilities. Why? What are the parallels that they're drawing in their statements? They are saying mosque, mosque, mosque. So the parallel to that if mosques have been brought down, that means will they target a particular or possible mandir? They've said schools or madrasas. So the other part is, will it be a school? The third most important part is, for the first time, they have been struck deep in Punjab across the IB. So Bahawalpur and Muridke. So will Asim Munir want to forget everything else, want to strike at something which is across the IB, not just the LOC, and is something which has got to be a religious symbol, which is a counter to the culture as he has juxtaposed it and he said it. What does that imply? Then does Bharat then hang back and say, all right, tumne kar diya ho gaya, or we've quelled that opportunity?
Rahul
I'm just reading the statement.
Let's not second guess what the Pakistanis will do or what target they will have. My fear is that the response from the Pakistani side will be driven more by irrationality. And I think that is a difficult thing to control, because how do you then get someone to see reason? If you look at the Indian Army statement, I was very, very impressed. The first statement that the ADG-PR put out, the three sentences that stood out for me were, number one, this is non-escalatory. Number two, no military targets are being hit. And number three, all of this was from this side of the LOC.
And no civilians.
And no civilians targeted. Now, my point is, there was no need for the army to put those statements there. The signaling was clear from the Indian Army side that, look, if you choose not to retaliate, then we can finish this matter here. India has no interest in escalating this.
Again, I'm drawing your attention to flight Radar 24.
You should be the brand ambassador for this.
Website. Probably done a great turn to these people. But look at this corridor on the Indian side.
It's empty.
It's empty. So all these border states are empty, but Pakistan has a few civilian flights now.
Those border states are also empty because all those airports are shut. From Srinagar to Jammu to Chandigarh, down up to Jodhpur, Jaisalmer, they're all shut.
There were two airports that were shut in Pakistan also this morning.
I don't know. And Lahore.
Yes, so I don't know. I can see some action here in Lahore. I don't know if it's been opened. I'll have to dive a little deeper. But clearly, India is taking precautions.
Huge amount of precaution that's being taken. Now, let me add one more. Now, here is Ishaq Dar's media talk at the Parliament House after the National General Assembly. Shailendra Wangu is saying, and during that short brief, he's tried to recall the Jafar Express hijacking and highlighted that. You just spoke about it. And he has said that attack had links with Bharat. So they are trying to draw a parallel to say that whatever the Baloch are doing is at the insistence or way that Bharat is behind it. As far as their claim, they have not said one iota of equivalence. False equivalence and not one iota of proof. But they are claiming that we have irrefutable evidence regarding it. That's what Shehbaz Sharif is also trying to say. So they are trying to link what happened with Jafar Express to try and justify what happened in Pahalgam, to say India was behind this and we have got. So this is again this entire thing that Bharat is fomenting terror on Pakistani soil and they have a camp. Now what camp do they have here to say that this is where something is happening or we are training Afghans or the Baloch? There is nothing like that. So this bluster is also happening. So somewhere one wonders what they're going to do.
He's saying that because tonight the Iranian foreign minister is going to be here in Delhi and he's coming from Islamabad. And they share a border, Iran and Pakistan, and the Baloch problem. There are Iranian Balochis, there are Pakistani Balochis, and there's a problem between the two of them as well. So this greater Balochistan that they want encompasses some parts of Iran as well. So this has been a big fault line between Iran and Pakistan, specifically on the Baloch question. But look, like I said a moment ago, that Jafar Express killings were a real sort of stab in the heart of the Pakistan army, because just like in Pahalgam, Hindus were segregated and killed for being Hindu, army personnel was segregated and killed in a moving train for being uniformed personnel. I mean, if the army can't protect its own, then how can they protect a civilian population? It was a direct question mark on the abilities of the Pakistan army and the person who's at the helm of it.
So then we can trace back and say Pulwama, in Pulwama it was CRPF or it was security forces who have always been targeted by Pakistani proxies. So, and if they believe that army personnel were targeted directly, indirectly and somewhere, whatever their convoluted claims, how does that justify targeting civilians and singling out Hindus and saying that no, because you're Hindu, I'm going to shoot you down?
And the other particular problem that the Pakistanis have because of what happened in 1971, because this idea of two nation got completely dismembered with West Pakistan and East Pakistan completely, going their two separate ways. This idea of, this greater Muslim brethren completely got, appended with the 1971 war. The other nightmare scenario for the Pakistanis is the Balochis separating away and forming their own country. Because if that happens, again, it's a further blow to the idea of the two nation. And more importantly, Balochistan is where the Chinese have invested $60 billion through CPEC. All of that goes out the window. I mean, if Balochistan, technically, let's say hypothetically, in 10 years' time, separates, secedes from Pakistan and becomes like Afghanistan, an independent republic, then the Chinese don't need Pakistan. They don't need the Pakistan for Gwadar. They don't need Pakistan for all of these pipelines and the CPEC. So this is the second big nightmare
If the Baloch unite, decide to strike a deal with the Chinese and also with the Americans, then Pakistan is left redundant. The other thing is 42% of today's Pakistan is all Balochistan.
Yes.
So that's a huge number, 42 or 48% actually, that's the number. So it's quite a huge one.
And the one thing that I just want to draw your attention to, Anand, is that the Pakistan finance ministers convene an emergency meeting to review market resilience, national financial situation. So in the short term, see, even if they are planning to retaliate, they don't want to get involved in anything that's long drawn. Right now, we've had two conflicts and they have dragged on.
Right.
Much beyond their sell-by date, they have become almost, people have become almost inured to their positions. They have become quicksand. And the least that Pakistan can expect right now is to perhaps terminate this, maybe leave it for another day. But if they get into something in haste and they make a mistake, they'll get sucked in. And they're already bleeding. The Karachi Stock Exchange collapsed.
Yeah, we got more news coming through. Just quickly, former Prime Minister of Britain, Rishi Sunak, has also tweeted saying no nation should have to accept terrorist attacks being launched against it from land controlled by another country. India is justified in striking terrorist infrastructure. There can be no impunity for terrorists. I hope he meant immunity for terrorists, but that's what he said. But we got more news coming through. A mega exclusive. Manoj Kumar Gupta getting us the details. Pak Army has shown its loyalty to Lashkar and Jaish. Top government sources say Pak Prime Minister's statement and directions to the army itself is clear indication that they are the biggest supporters of these jihadi groups. Large number of police and army personnel attended the funerals and namaz-e-janaza of the killed jihadis.
Can we blow up that picture?
Let's go full frame on those
the
pictures
visual
if we
that's
can.
there. Some people are saying the guy who's leading the prayer is Hafiz Saeed. I'm not sure. I can't verify.
He's not.
But look at the number of army uniformed personnel who were there at the funeral of these slain terrorists.
Yeah.
And then they say, the state has nothing to do with these
No,
non-state
I think there
actors.
is a minister, there is a politician also standing there, the local minister is there. Some believe the guy in the cap there at the last looks like this one, Syed Salahuddin, but that's not true. They all look similar.
This is an official...
It's like a state funeral.
Yeah, it looks almost like a state funeral. Why?
I mean, the flag of Pakistan
For a bunch of... I mean, unless this person was an ex-army officer or was a Fauji who got killed, but I don't think...
No, ex-Fauji turned jihadi. That's a possibility. That's a big possibility. And this is army. There is also police which is there. Some of the rangers were available. Different uniforms which can be seen. And how is it? Akash is with us. Akash, so government sources very clearly showing the number of people who have turned up for this. They are wearing their uniform and coming. So these terror tanzeems having open state backing, what bigger proof than this?
Right, and Anand, these pictures are somewhere showing, a deep, systematic and, old connection, in fact, between the government and the Pakistani army and these groups. Remember, Pakistan has always said that, they have nothing to do with the terrorism, and in fact, they are the victim of terrorism. But these pictures are somewhere showcasing that how, in fact, their army personnel, in fact, the officers, senior officers, Anand, there you have star officers, in fact. These star officers are taking part in this funeral. In fact, at a time when India has given evidences that how we have destroyed, these camps where these terrorists were getting training, they were recruiting, youth to, work against India. At such a time, these pictures are actually showing the sort of connection that, in fact, the international community, should look at.
Right.
This is something that India highlighted always, and this information is basically by our investigation editor Manoj Gupta, who is in fact, who has in fact got us these photos and videos where these army officials from Pakistan are very much taking part in this funeral.
Right. Now, Bharat has said we dropped 21 packages across 9 targets, across 9 locations out of, so that's what we are given to understand. The Pakistanis are claiming that there were 80 Bharatiya jets and they have downed 5 jets that include 3 Rafales. So these are the claims that the Pakistanis are making. They can make their claims. We'll go by what the government has said so far. They've said there has been no loss and everything has gone according to plan. That's the word that's come in officially. We'll wait for anything to the counter. But Zaka, diplomatically, there is an overdrive. The External Affairs Minister has not been seen, but him and his team seem to be working the works, the machine, the phones, working the phones behind the scene. See, Takeshi Iwaya of Japan, the foreign minister, has been spoken with. Spain's been spoken with. Multiple conversations.
Germany and France
Germany and France have also been spoken with. Your thoughts on this?
Look, I think one huge challenge for India would be to manage the diplomatic fallout. You heard the comments from Donald Trump yesterday. I wish we can play that soundbite again. He took a very, almost wishy-washy position. It's the problem that's been going on for over 1,000 years. I trust them to sort it out, so on and so forth. Secretary Rubio spoke to both National Security Advisor Doval as well as to the National Security Advisor Asim Malik of Pakistan. He's also asking for, calmer sort of tempers, as it were, and to try and move towards a quick, peaceful resolution. So the Americans are saying that, look, we have no interest in escalating the situation. Same's the case with the Europeans. I think the important conversations also that the External Affairs Ministry officials as well as NSA office officials have had are also with the Saudis and with the Emiratis and also the Qataris. I think
Chinese.
Yeah, and with the Chinese as well, with Wang Yi. So, ensuring that all the sort of blocks are spoken to and they need to understand why India has taken this decision, why India has taken this coercive action, and to be able to sort of convince them that, look, we have no interest in escalating. We have done what we needed to do. This is in retaliation to killing of our civilians. And from the statement of the Indian Army, the very first statement of the Indian Army, it's very clear that India does not want to, and India is not interested in climbing the escalation ladder. But if the other party chooses to, then we'll have no option but to follow
But
suit.
I think fundamentally...
Just on this part, just note this to the viewers and to you. The NSC statement talked about corresponding action.
Yes.
But Shehbaz Sharif has not spoken about corresponding action. He's not talked about retaliation when he spoke in the assembly. In the NSC, they did talk about corresponding action, but in those 2 hours that the NSC statement came, and has something changed? That's the question.
The
that
key,
remains.
I think, to what Pakistan does next, and there have been today again conversations between the Chinese ambassador and the leadership, I think are in Beijing really. I think Beijing will dictate the agenda. Beijing is reveling in this. Let me be honest, we've been hyphenated once again with Pakistan, something that we were shunning. We had emerged much beyond. Pakistan has been now able to internationalize this entire issue. It is, Zach, you were telling me, most international outfits are focused on this story, news outlets, etc. So this is something that we don't want. And if you remember, the Prime Minister, when he spoke, he didn't even refer to this whole thing. His public speech today was about Viksit Bharat, where India is going to be the fulcrum for India. He has charted, it's spinning on a development Viksit Bharat fulcrum. We have already exited the orbit that Pakistan resides in. We see ourselves as a power that's furthering the cause of humanity. He's talking about space exploration, pushing the frontiers of discovery and innovation further. He's not even referring to this. So clearly he's very keen that we've done what we had to do. We've given a very rational explanation. We've taken the trouble of presenting evidence and of course proof that we've only struck terror targets that Pakistan should not be crying about, because they themselves said these were uncontrolled non-state actors and we are victims of terror. So here we have done some of their dirty work for them. We've helped them out here. So please let bygones be bygones. Let's move on. We've got a lot of other work to do.
See, another point is it being highlighted that we have, and I think multiple leaders, Rajnath Singh also said, we stuck at the terror infrastructure.
Yeah.
So this infrastructure aspect, rather than having a high body count and focusing on the infrastructure, that we are demolishing the infrastructure that breeds these people, that focus, will that somehow also be pushed very strongly, saying that we didn't go there to kill human lives or take human lives, but we went there to demolish infrastructure that is radicalizing human beings. And that narrative, and that we have been the victim of this. So this victim card, are we playing it well? The Pakistanis played very well. Are we playing that well?
The two big ones that were hit were Murid K and Bahawalpur, right? Murid K for the Lashkar-e-Taiba and Bahawalpur for the Jaish-e-Mohammed. Now, the people who matter in these two terror organizations were already probably, hushed out.
Right.
Probably, days before this Operation Sindur unfolded. But the problem that happened is, because particularly in the case of Bahawalpur and even in the case of Murid K actually, it is bang in the middle of a mass infestation of people. So if we're going to hit that compound, and as you've been saying, it's an 18-20 acre compound, you're going to have some collateral damage.
Correct.
And that collateral damage was visible. I mean, what are these funerals for? I mean, it is for dead people at the end of the day. So the point is, India now needs to manage the fallout of this, both international perception, which is hugely important, and also manage whatever potential military backlash or fallout there could be, or retaliation there could be from the Pakistani side.
In fact, the counter pounding and shelling by the Pakistanis, the body count at our end, unfortunately, is higher than what the official numbers claimed by the Pakistanis based on the strikes are by the armed forces, the Indian armed forces.
See, but that's
43 people injured, 15 people killed.
But that
I
is a
think
cost.
there is a further retribution that is demanded now.
That is a cost that I think they factored in. I think the ceasefire violation deaths that have happened, unfortunately, and very, very unfortunately, but I think in the escalation ladder, that is a cost that they have factored in. What would prompt India, from India's point of view, what would force India's hand to climb back up on the escalation ladder is if they start scrambling jets, and if newer targets are hit. That would change India's calculus.
It's not okay for Pakistanis to kill civilians. If they have a problem claiming that terrorists are civilians, then civilians are civilians, and they have got nothing to do, right?
Innocent,
so,
and
they
that's
are
what
innocent,
the statement
and
is
you
saying.
killed 26 there in Pahalgam, and now another 15 have been killed. How can Bharat climb down the escalation ladder when Pakistan continues to push the buttons? This cannot be kosher. There is a story that, India can take to the world and say, listen, they've killed another 15 of our civilians, what do I do? They've hurt another 43. There are children and women here. So aren't they women and children? Don't they deserve to live? Aren't they people who have died? Aren't they civilians? And what is Pakistani army covering itself in glory for? We are the victims here. Again, after Pahalgam, again victims along the LOC. We didn't start the firing, you did. These are things that we can go out and
but India
claim
has
and
found
say
itself
very
lacking,
aggressively.
I have to say, in competing with Pakistan's ability to project themselves as a victim. This has happened time after time. Pakistan sells this story successfully. I don't know why and how it manages to, that it is a victim. That India is this bigger power that is straining at the leash. It takes exception to stuff that the Pakistani state doesn't even know that it has done, supposedly. There's never ever any proof, and we take the flak for it. So I think this is where we are somehow messing up. And you know, there was a commentator in the morning, I think it was Sushant Sareen, if I'm not mistaken, and he made a good point actually. He said that India needs to, like Israel did, they had to manage perception. The Hamas was wrapping up dead bodies and saying that kids have been killed, schools have been attacked. They were playing pretty much the Pakistan game. Some of it was obviously true. A lot of it turned out to be fake news. But that sort of overwhelmed the news cycle. The sight of civilian deaths. Where is the sight of our civilian deaths overwhelming any news cycle? Anywhere in the world? Why isn't our government going out and saying that our innocents have been killed once again?
Yeah.
Defending whom?
No, but again, Rahul, I come back to the point. I think that is a factor that's been calculated in the Indian calculation as far as whether to escalate or not. That's been factored in. And secondly, you know, I'm coming back to, look, there is a calculus, right? There is a war gaming that's been done.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you don't make a virtue
but
out of the victims.
No, I think it's
you
also,
need to go out there. Yes, it's factored in.
Yeah.
But it's not a proportionate
That's
response.
not for the world to know. That's not for the enemy to know. That's the enemy has to see, the world has to see only broken limbs, hurt people, and this is what the Pakistanis are doing to our civilians.
I think it is part of your strategic response calculus. So my point is, what will change that? What will force India to go from saying this morning, as they did, we've taken a non-escalatory step, from going from there to going back to on the escalation ladder? I think that will have to be then precipitative action that the Pakistani military takes, which would affect possibly, you know, outside of Kashmir.
Are we reading this wrong? I want to ask you, Zach, are we reading this wrong? Was this the only strike that India is thinking of conducting? Could there be more?
Well, if the Pakistanis don't react, then I think India
is this the unbearable punishment? I'm now holding up the Prime Minister's words, okay, for scrutiny. He promised unbearable punishment. Rajnath Singh said that, look, it will be along the lines that the public wants, and to some extent, Amit Shah.
That can't be a military response.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's not always necessarily be kinetic.
It may not be.
Yeah, the IWT abeyance remains. So this is the limited kinetic action that was required. There is a terror infrastructure. We've done it. We're coming back off the kinetic ladder. But that doesn't mean that the offensive against a terror state has stopped. 28,000 cusecs of water has been released. So tap on, tap off continues, and that's going to torment that nation. And they are currently stretched. That nation is in disarray. There will be more internal strife. And we don't know, diplomatically somewhere we may go back and start highlighting the kind of atrocities the Pak army is convert. This whole narrative of ye jo dehshatgardi hai, iske piche Paki vardi hai, that part can be highlighted. So that's all on the offensive. Trying to isolate Pakistan diplomatically, block the IMF billion aid, get it back on the FATF grey list. These are all offensive moves which Bharat need not deter from or take a leg back from.
I wish it would be more public. I'm sure, and we've been seeing a flotilla of diplomats being summoned to South Block, and I'm sure the EAM is meeting them and giving them
the permanent members have been...
that's the news, that 13 UNSC members have been briefed by the Foreign Secretary. 22nd April attack was escalation for us. TRF was underlined, how Pakistan brought out TRF's name. That shows some nefarious motive of Pakistan. Pak realized after 2 days that they have to shield TRF, and even TRF then denied the involvement. So they've outlined that entire sequence. Our response measured and non-escalatory. We targeted only terrorist infrastructure. See, again, very clearly, we are not even saying we targeted terrorists. We are saying we targeted the infrastructure. In Poonch, Pak, firing is on. Civilian infrastructure was also mentioned. Foreign secretaries also said we have responded to a terror attack and we have targeted terrorist infra, but if possible, response. Then there is response on there. We'll have to respond equally. A lot of casualty on the Indian side of the LOC. A lot of firing has happened, and this has been highlighted. 15 people, 15 civilians dead in the last 8-9 hours.
So I guess it's happening in private. They're not putting it out publicly, but certainly it's happening.
Make a more public demonstration of it so that the international press can also be sort of brought into the loop.
Well, Siddhant is live with us on this. Yes, Siddhant. So multiple briefings, strong briefings, phone calls are also happening, and the UNSC nations have been spoken with.
Well, yes, that's right, Anand. In fact, after speaking to multiple sources, we have been told that Foreign Secretary has made India's position very, very clear. In fact, he said that what happened on 22nd April was escalation for India. In fact, he also went on to expose Pakistan's nefarious designs, that how Pakistan protected TRF as far as 25th April UNSC statement is concerned. And in fact, he did also touch upon that how initially TRF claimed the terror attack, and perhaps after 2 days they denied that they don't have any role to play. Once again, Vikram Misri, reiterated India's position that that India has only hit terror sites. Perhaps no military installations or civilian installations were touched. In fact, some of the envoys did ask about this to the Foreign Secretary, that what is India's assessment as far as Pakistan's response is concerned. To which again Foreign Secretary reiterated that India's position is very clear, that India has hit the terror camps, not the civilian areas or not the military areas. So if in case tomorrow Pakistan retaliates or perhaps hits back, then that would be civilian areas in India, because India doesn't have terror camps. Also, we have been told that UK High Commissioner raised this issue, that whether India only targeted mosques, to which Foreign Secretary said that we targeted markers. Now, markers is a complex. Now, complex has playing area, worship area, and other areas. So maybe taking a hit, mosque could also have got damaged. But particularly mosque or any religious sites were not targeted by the Indian forces.
Why didn't the UK? Why isn't the UK asking the Pakistanis that were you running terror camps and terror bases and having swimming pools and tennis courts behind the mosque? So how is that okay? And what is the logic behind that? So there is a difference between a markaz and a mosque. A mosque can be part of a markaz, but a markaz is not necessarily a mosque. Thank you for that, Siddhant. Gents, thank you very, very much. The coverage continues. Zaka is there on with a special broadcast as we continue with our coverage on Operation Sindur. Stay with us.
Exactly 2 weeks after what happened in Pahalgam, the Indian Army, through Operation Sindur, has hit 9 targets.
The US NSA briefed Secretary of State Marco Rubio, briefed Zaka. So all these people being briefed in advance saying this is what we are doing.
Will these restore deterrence in Pakistan's mind? These strikes are significant, Anand. They are in proper Pakistan.
What is the thinking right now in GHQ in Rawalpindi? What is the thinking of Asim Munir? This is a direct hit at his authority, the authority of the Pakistan Army.
They are saying that India attacked us, remaining within their boundaries. So they have confirmed that, no jets who are there in the Pakistani airspace.
He was personally monitoring Operation Sindur. So PM was monitoring Operation Sindur, so he was there, aware of what was going on and personally monitoring what was going on. So for some of the jibes that came at where is our Prime Minister and he's Gayab, etc., this is confirmation that he was right in the thick of it. And at the highest level of government, this Operation Sindur was being monitored, it's been planned and it's also now been implemented. Yes, Group Captain Vinod.
Great point. So let me quickly finish about this loitering munition. Most of the loitering munition today has the capability to go up without any target. And once the target pops up, it keeps loitering. And once the target pops up, it will hit the target. Erstwhile loitering munitions were against the radars. Today, loitering munition can be against anything. Point number one. Point number two, and coming back to Anand, your point. When is the last time when we have seen the premier of a country, of our country, Prime Minister of our country in the ops room, monitoring operations like they do in US. I mean, the US operations you've seen many times, Obama monitoring the operations, or even Junior Bush monitoring operations. Likewise, in India, this is the first time I think I have seen for the first time that Prime Minister is so much involved in monitoring the operations and also taking call as to what kind of targets to take. Very, very important. Muzaffarabad, I just came to know that the tolls have gone up to 30 to 31 people, which means big names and big people in Muzaffarabad must have gone. Same is in
Just give me a
Bahawalpur.
moment. I also want to go across
names.
to Aman Sharma, our political editor. So Prime Minister Modi monitoring these operations live. Aman, what more details do you have? All right.
This is an important development actually in the larger scheme of things, not just optically, but this does tell you that the Prime Minister is completely involved. And people who have been constantly critical of the Prime Minister perhaps will need to look back. I don't want to make this political at any level, but the fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister guiding this, you saw him on the first day itself. He returned from Saudi Arabia very, very quickly. He was on the first flight as he's landing at 7 in the morning, held a meeting at the airport, came to his residence. Viewers, welcome to CNN News 18's rolling coverage of the biggest news story of the year, quite easily. India avenges Pahalgam. 9 targets eviscerated in Pakistan. All of them, of course, are terror targets, i.e., the factories that produce the terrorists that bleed India through 1,000 cuts. India has been very, very clear from very much the first blow, which was struck between 1 and 1:30 in the morning. Viewers, most of us were woken up from our sleep to be confronted by these scenes of 9 strikes, several munitions, hovering munitions that homed in on their targets and created the devastation that you're seeing on your screens. These targets were not just restricted, viewers, to POK, but this time deep into Pakistan, 30 kilometers from Lahore. And of course, taking out 2 of the biggest, most visible terror cradles in Pakistan. One nestled in Bahawalpur, the other one Mudrike. Mudrike is literally a suburb of Lahore, the seat really of Pakistan's elite, the place where not only General Munir, but most of the Pakistan's elite hail from. This is the province of Punjab. Lahore is the iconic city. Just about 30 kilometers out of it, look at the scenes of devastation. All these other pictures are also in from Bahawalpur, viewers, where some high-value targets were eliminated, including 10 members of Masood Azhar's family. Masood Azhar, of course, is the leader of the Jaish-e-Mohammed. All of this means, viewers, that India has been able to exact, if not a degree of justice, but at least a great deal of vindication for the terrible carnage that was wrought upon innocents in Pahalgam. Now, viewers, is this only the end of the beginning, so to speak? Let's get that question in with General VP Malik, former Chief of Army Staff. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us. You were, of course, at the helm of affairs when India drove the intruders out of Kargil, but this is very, very different. The context is also very different. How would you evaluate, first of all, India's strike, this panoply of strikes, the packages that were used, and most importantly, do you believe that this is literally the end of the beginning, or is it not?
Good evening, Rahul. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir.
This strike, there has been a paradigm shift from our earlier proactive actions that we took. The first proactive action, politically sanctioned, was when we carried out surgical strikes after the Uri attack by the terrorists. That was the first time that politically we were given the mandate to go ahead and strike their camps not very far away from the line of control. The second one was even slightly higher after Pulwama's incident that took place. And this time the Air Force went and struck the Balakot camp, which is not just in POK, but in Punjab. And it hit the Jaish camp there. So this time, when we thought that Pakistani terrorists and their sponsors had crossed the red line, it had to be a much harsher response. And that is what happened this time. We started off with whole of the nation approach, in which we started off with diplomatic and economic activities. We stopped their water and we told them that we are now suspending the Indus Water Treaty, which is a very major step that is being taken. It has been considered so many times earlier, but this step was never taken earlier. And this time we had the courage to take that step. And of course, here I mean political courage that we had. The other thing, as far as the strike is concerned, now this time we have taken on all the camps of both Jaish as well as Lashkar, not only in POK, but also in Punjab. As you know, we have struck Bhavalpur, we have struck Muridke, which is close to Lahore, and we have also struck another camp in Sialkot. And we have used the newer weapons that are available with us, the technology that is available with the services. We have made full use of that. So there has been a paradigm shift in our handling this particular activity this time, or carrying out this retaliatory action as compared to the earlier ones. And this whole of the nation approach is still ongoing, let me say that. The Indus Water River has, we have already suspended it, and we can continue to block or let the water flow whenever we want. And also we can make full use of the river water that we had in mind. You know, there are so many hydropower projects that we have in mind to be able to make use of these river flows, particularly in J&K, I would say. So this time has been a paradigm shift. But the other part of your question, is it the beginning of the end? I'm not too sure. My own view is that although we have been able to hit the people and their camps of terrorists who are functioning under the armed forces, Pakistani army in particular, you know, we have not hit the people who are giving them orders, the people who are sponsoring them. And these terrorists who have come on our side or who are camping that side, they are dispensable people, dispensable commodity as far as the Pakistan army is concerned. The other thing is that this time Pakistan army has been hit, at least their intention. People are now crying in Pakistan and asking what is the Pakistan army doing. So its image has been hit. And that probably was also one of our intention to do that. So with that image, with its image having been hit, I have a feeling that there will be a certain retaliatory action from their side. And we have to be prepared for that. And a good thing is that we are a much stronger power today, and we can dominate the escalation, and we can stop it or wherever we want to, that escalatory action activities.
So General Saab, are you saying that, okay, how would you assess the options that we considered this time and their deterrent capacity? Has it served as a deterrent, this option that we have considered?
Hopefully so. And, you know, but I would not be very certain about it, frankly. I'm saying because after all, these people, the Jaish and the Lashkar and all, they are dispensable commodity as far as Pakistan army is concerned. You know, if we had hit Pakistan army establishment and done something which lowers the image of the Pakistan army in Pakistan, then, you know, you could have looked at it slightly differently. But the manner in which Pakistan Army looks at these dispensable commodity under their control, I'm not too sure whether this is the last time that we will face the terrorist action from the other side.
Do you believe, General, that we should have actually also hit a range of military or deep state targets if we really wanted to enforce deterrence on Pakistan? If we wanted to enforce, we should have broadened the scope?
Personally, I feel that we should have. It has not hit the Pakistani military directly. And unless, it hits Pakistan military and their leadership directly, they will probably wait for another opportunity to carry out this very cheap strike capability which is available with them.
So, General Malik, what really was the objective then behind this package of munitions and, of course, the wherewithal that they relied upon and the strategy that has been adopted? What do you think went through the military commanders' minds when they decided to adopt these options rather than a more broader option?
Look, I think, this should not be looked at only militarily. This is a really political activity, political aim, objective, which is what makes the army and armed forces follow a certain strategy and select the targets. Now, I think we want to bring down the image of Pakistan and isolate Pakistan, particularly its terrorist activities. It is, everybody knows that it is the hub of the terrorism in this part of the world, both internationally as well as in domestically also in Pakistan. The fact is that Pakistan today is suffering. It has been suffering politically, financially, we all understand that, and socially also. Punjabi Muslims are getting isolated within their own country. And Pakistan Army also doesn't have the same kind of image that it had some years ago. So I think we were trying to lower the image, isolate Pakistan, both internationally. So probably that was what was in our mind. And that is why the diplomatic activity has been quite strong to isolate Pakistan.
Well, obviously, a response from Pakistan will also depend on what they make of this particular action that India has taken. So if they assess it to be one that is anti-Islam, because they have said already in their statements, and this is not me, but this is what they have said in their statements, that mosques were destroyed and that we targeted their place of worship. Then they went on to say innocents were killed. So Muslims were targeted, innocent Muslims were targeted. Then they went on to say that these strikes were unprovoked, that India is playing aggressor. If one were to incorporate these assessments that Pakistan has made, then on the basis of that, how do you see them responding? Is it going to be like for like? Are they going to go after, for example, religious sites in India? Are they going to target civilians? What do you think?
I think for that, you have to understand the mindset of the Pakistani military leadership today. And we all understand, we all know that after the kind of speeches that Asim Munir has made recently, what kind of a mindset he has. He is a madrasa-educated person who believes in two-nation theory. The rest of Pakistan or rest of the world may not believe in it, but he does that. And he is also a radicalized Islamist. There is absolutely no doubt about it, the kind of speeches that he has been making lately. So when you look at that, I won't be surprised that they make another effort in this direction. And they may again target somewhere and try and divide Hindus, Muslims, as they have done in Pahalgam and elsewhere also. So this kind of terrorist strike, I won't rule it out. I'm not saying that it may happen tomorrow or day after tomorrow. I think for some time that deterrent will work. But then as long as people like Munir are in power and dominating not only the military but also the Pakistani polity, you should not rule out that kind of action from their side.
Well, General Manik, let's just hope that better sense prevails. Of course, we'll be talking to you over the next few days. We'll obviously value your insights and do please make time for us. We're going to now terminate this interview. Thank you very much, sir. Run out of time. Let's listen in to some reactions that are coming in, important ones, on this particular evolving story.
जब तक आतंकवाद खत्म ना हो, इस तरह की घटनाएं खत्म ना हो, तब तक मात्र मैं नहीं कहूंगा कि भाई भारत सरकार पूरे वर्ल्ड को ही इसके अगेंस्ट खड़ा होकर के और इनको नेस्ता नाबूद कर देना चाहिए.
Definitely a lot of justice is there because the army people and air force people, they have done a lot of work and they have attacked the 9 terrorist hideouts and they killed them. That's a good news for all the people of India because hereafter there may not be any terrorists attacking Indian people.
हमको लगता है कंप्लीट होना चाहिए. बार बार ये टेररिस्ट अटैक आज पहले बार विजिट मतलब जो पीओके में हुआ है हमेशा ही होते रहता है. ये जंग मतलब ये जो टेररिस्ट लोग को पूरा ख़त्म करना चाहिए. ऐसा मतलब स्ट्राइक तो किया है, मतलब स्ट्राइक जब किया है तो कंप्लीट होना चाहिए.
তাদের কাছে ধন্যবাদ. আমার হাজবেন্ড এটা নিশ্চয়ই দেখছেন. আজ যে অপারেশন সিঁদুর লিখেছে আমার আজকে সিঁদুর তারা কেটে নিয়েছে. ভগবান আমার হাজবেন্ডকে শান্তি দিই আর ভবিষ্যতে যাতে কারোর কপালে সিঁদুর না যায় এটাই গভর্নমেন্টের কাছে আমার रिक्वेस्ट. আর কিছু না.
इतना ही बोलूँगा कि ये इकलौती कार्रवाई नहीं होनी चाहिए. ऐसे कंटिन्यू अटैक्स उन पे होने चाहिए तभी वो मतलब वो सुधरने वालों में से तो है नहीं क्योंकि पहली 2 बार भी हमने उन पर अटैक किया था, मतलब रिप्लाई दिया था, खुद से अटैक नहीं किया था. तो तभी भी उन्होंने हिम्मत करी तीसरी बार अटैक करने की. तो इस बार उन पर ऐसा अटैक होना चाहिए कि चौथा अटैक करने के लिए वो बचना ही नहीं चाहिए, तभी कुछ होगा.
आज मोदी जी ने और जितने भी लोग इस ऑपरेशन में इन्वॉल्व हैं, हमारी आर्म फोर्सेस ने आज कहीं ना कहीं उन 26 लोगों की फैमिलीज को दिखा दिया है कि हम आपका बदला पर्सनल लेवल पे हम आपके लिए खड़े होके बदला लेके वापस आए.
So, India and Pakistan on the edge of a precipice. India has carried out Operation Sindoor, in which 9 different locations have been hit, 21 strikes over a period of 25 minutes. India has indicated it does not want to or is interested in escalating further. The question is, how will Pakistan respond? Will it choose to take the off-ramp or will it escalate further? And if that happens, then how does India respond? Are we now on the brink of possibly an all-out war between these two nuclear-armed neighbors? Christine Fair is an American political scientist, professor with the Georgetown University, is an expert on Kashmir and Pakistan. Thank you very much, ma'am, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. First things first, what do you make of Operation Sindoor, which was launched in the wee hours of this morning on the 7th of May by the Indian Armed Forces? They have said that they've hit 9 different locations from Muzaffarabad in the north to Muridke and to Bahawalpur, which are the headquarters of the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed. What do you make of the operation and the action that the Indian Armed Forces have taken?
So I think it's a really important note that the Indians have really escalated by targeting Muridke and Bahawalpur, which are in the Punjab. I think, as all of your viewers know, the Punjab is pretty much the heartland of Pakistan. It's certainly the heartland of the Pakistan Army. And so when you talk about will Pakistan take the off-ramp, well, right now there is no off-ramp. The Pakistan Army has been put into a position where it's going to have to retaliate. And then once that retaliation takes place, it depends on how Pakistan's going to retaliate. But a retaliation is most certain to happen. I think at the strategic level, no matter how important these attacks are, and I certainly believe them to be important, the strategic level, it doesn't change Pakistan's calculus. And so going to some of the things that former Army Chief Vaid Malik had to say, we've seen this rodeo before. We saw it at Pulwama, right? A pretty sharp conflict crisis. There was an off-ramp, normalcy returned to the valley for several years. But if you know the Pakistan Army, you know that the Pakistan Army is an insurgent army. The Pakistan Army's goal is not to defeat India. It knows that it can't. the Pakistan Army's goal is to show that it has not been deterred by India. And how it does this, unfortunately, is by episodically conducting strategic terrorist attacks in Kashmir or sometimes in India as well.
It's interesting you
say
say
elsewhere in India. I don't mean to imply that Kashmir is not a part of India.
Yeah.
That wasn't my intention.
I just want to go to the part where you said this is the first time that India has hit Punjab proper, whether it's Bahawalpur or Muridke, and that, as you said, is the heart, the very heart of the Pakistan military establishment. Why is that such a crossing a red line in your view?
I don't think it's necessarily crossing a red line, but it definitely means that looking for an immediate off-ramp is not going to be something that the Pakistan Army is going to be interested in. We also have to remember that this particular Pakistan Army at this juncture in time is really waning in popular support. Many Pakistanis have soured on the institution because of its treatment of Imran Khan. In fact, one may even say that maybe the timing of this attack in Pahalgam was precisely to generate a conflict wherein Pakistani support for the army would be shored up. So this is Pakistan's heartland. This is the heartland of the Pakistan Army. So I fully anticipate that Pakistan is going to retaliate.
So here's the thing. We're all trying to understand, what is the shape or form or nature of this response. And I want to go back to one of the points that you made. The thinking of the Pakistan Army is like an insurgent group. And that's why they could use these terrorist proxies, the Lashkars and the Jaishes, and there was always this degree of plausible deniability. Now, though, do you see the Pakistan Army sort of having been forced to respond in a conventional, proper military response, as opposed to the guerrilla stuff that you were talking about?
No, so what I was saying is that when there is a perduring peace in the valley, this is injurious to Pakistan's interests, right? Because it looks as if the Pakistanis have been compelled by India. And how do the Pakistanis prove that they haven't been compelled by India? Well, they conduct a terrorist attack. That was the argument that I was making. And what this means, unfortunately, is that the Indians are not able to, within the time constraints of a short war, to deliver a decisive defeat against the Pakistan Army. It just can't. That's just not an option that's available to it. It becomes more possible over a longer war, but longer wars are also very challenging because of the specter of nuclear weapons that both sides have. So unfortunately, as important as these strikes are, it isn't going to change the strategic calculus of the Pakistan Army. I anticipate, very much like Pulwama, there's going to be a crisis, there's going to be an off-ramp, there's going to be peace in the valley for some time, and then after a number of years, there's going to be another terrorist attack. And so, I think India is in a pretty tough bind. The international community doesn't take this terrorism by Pakistan seriously enough to put serious sanctions upon the Pakistani state. And the reason why Pakistan absconds every time is because of its nuclear weapons. Everyone is too afraid to do something catastrophic to Pakistan, the results of which might be Pakistani failure. Now, I, for one, reject those doomsday scenarios. I think we need to be very coercive towards Pakistan, but it's never going to happen. And so that puts India in this situation of every so many years having to mow the Pakistani terrorist lawn. And this is where we are.
No, what you're talking about is this pattern of, there's a terror attack and then there's punitive action. After a few years, there's again another terror attack and then there is further punitive action. What I'm interested in knowing, and I guess our viewers, the greatest curiosity right now, the greatest interest is in knowing what is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 days. If you were thinking like Asim Munir is thinking, what would he do?
Well, I can't think like Asim Munir for a variety of reasons.
I mean, as a phrase, as an expression.
No, I mean, and so that's not really my strong suit. My strong suit isn't playing armchair quarterback of what Pakistan is going to do in response. What Pakistan has said it's going to do is that Pakistan is going to respond by targeting those military bases from which assets were used to hit Pakistan. I mean, now, I don't go around taking Pakistan at its word, so I don't think you should either. But I'm not in a position to to propose what Pakistani targeting might look like.
But let's just for a moment, assume that argument happens, because look, India is very clear in the statements that it put out. It drew a very, very fine distinction. It said no military targets have been hit. It is only terror and terror infrastructure. If Pakistan were to retaliate, it would have to cook up that these are the places where India is fomenting, Baloch terror or whatever it is that they want to cook up, or they have to hit military targets, like you said. And if they do hit military targets, where does that leave India? Does that leave India with no other option but to climb the escalation ladder?
So, so that's the concern with these kinds of operations. And when India decided that it was going to launch strikes against targets in the Punjab, this was obviously a risk that India is willing to take. So, right now, it's not evident what is going to be the de-escalation off-ramp. It's not clear right now because we haven't seen what Pakistan has done. So I'm not a big fan of speculating about assumptions being presumed.
Okay.
So I'm gonna demur from answering that question.
You did say earlier that the international community has not quite confronted Pakistan and said that you can't do this whole double game of just sending these terror proxies every once in a while and creating these terror attacks. What about Trump though? He has pitched himself as the anti-war president. Famously on the campaign, he kept saying again and again when in his first term not a single war started, and he already has 2 wars that he's hoping to end in the next 4 years. And they are very difficult to end, as he's discovering now in office in his second term. Does he want to see a 3rd war start on his watch?
So I don't think we can look for sagacious leadership coming from Trump. This is just not something that this president is capable of delivering. So we have to look at the State Department and Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is not someone that I find particularly palatable. He is very much Trump's sycophant. He was a pretty vocal Trump foe turned Trump loyalist. I know that Paul Kapoor has been tasked with has been proposed as the Assistant Secretary of State. I presume that he is providing wise counsel to the State Department, although I haven't seen any impacts of that wise counsel. What we're still seeing is the both sidisms. So I don't think India can look to Trump for leadership. We'd like to believe that Marco Rubio is a little bit more competent. From what I've seen thus far, I don't have a lot of confidence. That's the case.
So if the U.S. is not going to intervene or use its influence to calm down tempers.
Well, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. What I thoroughly anticipate is there's going to be a lot of diplomacy with regards to Pakistan and with regards to India.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how efficacious. I just don't know how efficacious those efforts are going to be.
Okay, so that's the U.S. question. What do you reckon China is in a position to influence Pakistan and say that look, it's not in its interest to climb the escalation ladder? Does China have the leverage and the inclination to do that?
So China has the leverage. I don't think China wants to see a full-scale war. But I also don't think that China I think China does have a mild incentive for this conflict to play out a little bit, kind of along the lines of the duration that we saw at Pulwama. Unlike Balakot, when Pakistan scrambled American jets, I think we're mostly going to see Chinese assets at play. And China might be interested in seeing how Chinese assets fare against India's Western assets. So China, it's not like Kargil, where China played a very important role in telling the Pakistanis to stand down. I think China will eventually play that role, but not necessarily as quickly as you or I would hope.
Okay, so coming back to, as we come to the concluding part of this interview, and I'm trying to ask this in a different way because this is the top of mind concern for all our viewers, is how are the next 2 or 3 days going to pan out, and what do you expect is going to happen? Militarily, in terms of retaliatory strikes. This is a direct challenge, as you said, to the Pakistan army and its heartland, which is Punjab. So the military part, and of course the diplomatic part. How does India deal with the diplomatic fallout of this escalation as it's seemingly coming?
I mean, I don't know the answers to those questions. And so I'm not someone who just makes up bakwas to fill up airspace. I don't know the answers to those questions. I think Pakistan is going to take a while, maybe a day or so, to figure out what its response is going to be. If you think that Indians were demanding a response following Pahalgam, you can imagine that the Pakistanis are demanding a response following these strikes into the Punjab. Pakistan will tolerate attacks in so-called Azad Kashmir or Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Ordinary Pakistanis are not going to tolerate attacks in the Punjab. So this was a really important risk, a really important gamble that the Indians took. So we're going to have to just, whether one likes it or not, it doesn't work well for news cycles. We're just going to have to wait and see what the Pakistanis do. And how the Pakistanis choose to retaliate, then the ball is in India's court. And then we're all going to be hoping for swift global diplomacy to create some sort of an off-ramp where both sides have their pound of flesh and can create the domestic narrative that it's time to de-escalate.
Is the IMF negotiation that Pakistan has in a couple of days from now in Washington, is that a mitigating factor, if you will, in disincentivizing the army from retaliating?
No.
It isn't?
No.
And why wouldn't it be? It's a lot of money for a country that's broke.
Because Pakistan knows that its history with the IMF is that Pakistan never gets cut off from the IMF. And the reason for that is Pakistan's nuclear weapons makes Pakistan too dangerous to fail. So Pakistan knows that the international community doesn't play this brinkmanship with the IMF. That's why Pakistan was never put on the FATF blacklist. It was always on the gray list. And then, in a complete farce, it was even removed from the gray list, right? So yeah. Pakistan is confident that the international community is not going to play brinkmanship with the IMF.
Even if in the next 24 hours they retaliate, there's a big military strike, and in the next 48 hours they go to the IMF asking for money, it wouldn't be a factor, you think?
I don't believe it's going to be a significant factor that deters Pakistan from undertaking retaliatory strikes.
All right. Christine Fair, thank you very much. Fascinating conversation. We're all trying to make sense of what happens next. But thank you very much for attempting to make sense of what could likely happen next. But we'll see.
Thank you for having me. This was great fun. I enjoyed listening to Vaid Malik as always. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So there it is. Everyone sort of scratching their heads and trying to figure out, A, will there be a response? B, what is the nature of that response? What may be the targets that the Pakistan Army could likely pick in terms of a retaliatory hit? Look, picking a military installation will have much wider ramifications. Then it means that, again, as Christine Fair was saying, then India is left with no off-ramp. It means that India will also have to climb the escalation ladder. Two things which stand out in the Indian statement. You heard from Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary. You heard from the two military officers, Wing Commander Singh and Colonel Qureshi, the two women officers who were chosen to announce this publicly to the world. The language that they used was very, very specific, that it was non-escalatory. India is not looking to escalate further. The targets were terror infrastructure and terror launch pads, not civilians, and also underlining the fact that the targets were not military installations. I guess the messaging to the Pakistani military is, if you want to retaliate, do not think of targeting military installations, do not think of escalating, and do not think of targeting civilians. These are there's a lot of fog of war happening right now. Let's try and make sense of that again by speaking to yet another very, very influential voice, somebody who's a familiar sight here on CNN News 18, one of the most noted American political scientists from the University of Chicago, Professor John Mearsheimer. Thank you very much, Professor, for speaking with us. Good morning to you in Chicago. It's evening here in New Delhi. I'm sure you're up to speed with the developments that we've had over the last 12 hours or so. India's had these very specific targeted strikes at 9 different locations inside both Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir as well as Pakistan proper, Punjab, the heartland of Pakistan. What do you make of this Operation Sindoor, as it's known, to avenge the terrorist attack that happened in India a couple of weeks ago?
Well, it's hardly surprising that India retaliated. And I think the Indians, are walking a fine line here. in that they want to send a clear message. They want to send a powerful message to Pakistan that this is unacceptable behavior. But at the same time, I think the Indians are committed to making sure that this doesn't escalate too far, because that would not be to India's advantage.
But the ball is really in Pakistan's court, and the fear here in India is Pakistan will escalate, and the Pakistan army in particular. I was speaking to Christine Fair some time back, and she said there doesn't seem to be an off-ramp for the Pakistan army, and therefore they will have to escalate.
It seems to me that the Pakistanis have to retaliate. The question is, what does that retaliation look like? And then what does India do? I mean, what we're talking about here is going up the escalation ladder. And if you're India and you go up the escalation ladder, the question is, will you have escalation dominance? In other words, as you go up different rungs of the ladder, does India end up prevailing, or is it basically a stalemate? And the argument I would make is that Pakistan has substantial military capability and they can retaliate in kind. And it's not clear to me that India can dominate until you get pretty far up the escalation ladder. I mean, there's no question that India has superior conventional forces, but you'd need major war before those superior conventional forces could be brought to bear. So it's not clear, as you're down on the lower rungs of the escalation ladder, that India has much of an advantage over Pakistan.
You don't subscribe to the idea of a limited war, certainly sub-nuclear, even sub-conventional war, a limited war for a few days or weeks, that could then result in an off-ramp where both sides can take away something?
Well, that's a possibility. But then begin to run into is that if India's conventional superiority prevails, the Pakistanis may be tempted to use nuclear weapons to rectify the situation. This is not likely, but it is a possible or a plausible outcome. And if you're India, you want to avoid that. Furthermore, I don't think at this point in time it's in India's advantage to get involved in a conventional war with Pakistan.
Let me ask you this. Again, all of us are trying to figure out, make sense of what may likely be the Pakistani retaliation. And obviously, this is going to be determined in great measure by the current army chief, General Asim Munir. I'm sure you heard his comments a few weeks ago talking about how India and Pakistan and Hindus and Muslims are fundamentally two different people, never meant to live together, so on and so forth. If that's his thinking, is there a way you can sort of gaze into his head and try and gauge what kind of a response or what kind of a retaliation the head of the Pakistan army and his men could possibly undertake?
My guess is that what Pakistan will do is try to retaliate in a way that looks like the equivalent of the Indian retaliation that just took place. And the Pakistanis will do everything they can not to go further up the escalation ladder, because there's no advantage to Pakistan of going up the escalation ladder. There's no question that they do not have escalation dominance. They, I think, have to retaliate against India. I'd be surprised, I'd be shocked if Pakistan doesn't respond at all. But if they do respond, I think they hope that that would be the last round. But then the question is, will it be the last round, or will India retaliate again? And then if they do retaliate again, what will Pakistan do? And this is the real danger of escalation.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it depends entirely on the nature of the response and the target of the retaliation. So let me sort of delve into that a bit. If it's a civilian target, surely India will have no choice but to retaliate further. Even if it's a military target, India will have no other choice but to retaliate further. When you said earlier that it'll be a target that is similar to what India hit today in Pakistan, the problem there is there are no terror camps here in India. So what does Pakistan hit?
Well, the question is, how many people do the Pakistanis kill? I think it doesn't matter that much whether it's civilians or military. I mean, as you know, the Pakistanis are shelling the Indian part of Kashmir, and a number of Indian civilians have already been killed. So that precedent has been established, the killing of civilians, that is. I think the question is just how big the attack is. If the Pakistanis were to attack in a way that made the Indian attack look like it was much weaker than the Pakistani attack, then the Indians would have very powerful incentives to really slam Pakistan. But if the Pakistanis retaliate in kind, it's a similar retaliation in terms of the number of casualties, the scope of the target set, and so forth and so on, then the incentives for India to retaliate again are not so great. But I don't see an obvious off-ramp unless somebody comes in and can help put pressure on both sides to shut this one down.
It's interesting you say that, you know, in the Pakistani calculus, if they are able to demonstrate to the Pakistani public, if the Pakistani army is able to demonstrate to the Pakistani public that they have hit as many targets or they have hit as many individuals as India has done, then that should suffice. Of course, the ceasefire violations are happening at the line of control and have been in a very intense way over the last 12, 14 hours or so since the announcement of this Operation Sindur. The Indian Army has confirmed that 15 people have died. The concern and the fear here in India, and I guess part of it is built into India's strategic calculus, is if it's ceasefire violations, if it is fatalities at the line of control, that is something that is factored in India's strategic calculus. But if Pakistan starts scrambling its jets and wants to hit targets outside of Kashmir, then that puts India again in a position where it has to again match retaliation for retaliation. Would that possibly be a window of opportunity for both sides to try and find the elusive off-ramp?
I think it would be an incentive to do exactly that. As I said, I don't think Pakistan has any interest in going up the escalation ladder. I do think they have to retaliate. But if you go up the escalation ladder, they can't beat the Indians at any point. And the further up the escalation ladder you go, the greater the disadvantage that Pakistan is at. At the same time, I don't think India has a vested interest in going up the escalation ladder either, because they have to go far up before they dominate. And a major war, even a limited conventional war, I don't think is in India's interest at this point in time.
So let me come to the international community and their response. Obviously, you know, President Trump has spoken about what happened last night. Secretary Rubio has spoken to the National Security Advisor here. He's tweeted saying he wants to see a quick and hopefully peaceful resolution very soon. Do you think the Trump administration, the Americans have leverage with Pakistan to get the Pakistani army and the Pakistani army chief, General Munir, to back off and not retaliate?
I don't think the United States has as much leverage as it once had. I mean, you can see the U.S.-China competition playing itself out in terms of the India-Pakistan competition. I think Pakistan is much closer to China today than it has been in the past. And India is moving closer to the United States. So you are reaching a point where you have the United States and India on one side and China and Pakistan on the other side. And this presents problems for India because India has a deep-seated interest in keeping its competition with China at a low level. And if India gets involved in a serious way with Pakistan and the Chinese come in on the side of the Pakistanis, I'm not talking about them coming in militarily, but I'm talking about them coming in diplomatically and putting great pressure on India to shut the war down. This is not in India's interest. So I think from now on out, including what's going on today, it's quite clear that the U.S.-China competition and the India-China competition is superimposed on the India-Pakistan conflict.
I just want to explore that thought a little bit, because if you're saying basically that the India-Pakistan, situation, the India-Pakistan escalation is basically a proxy for the big power competition, the great power competition that's going on between the United States and China. isn't that even more of an incentive for the Trump administration to come in on the side of India, visibly do so, and try and de-escalate the situation?
Yeah, I think that the Trump administration, from a strategic point of view, has a vested interest in siding with India, but at the same time going to great lengths to make sure that this does not escalate. It's not in the Americans' interest to see this war escalate. By the way, it's not in China's interest as well. I think if anything, both the Chinese and the Americans, and even the Russians, will all go to great lengths to try and prevent this war from escalating. So I think, again, as we were saying, I don't see great incentives on the part of Pakistan or on the part of India to escalate further once Pakistan retaliates. But at the same time, I don't see any great incentive to allow this escalation on the part of the three great powers in the system, China and Russia.
You talked about China, and I'm curious to know, obviously China has leverage with Pakistan, influence with Pakistan to try and get it to de-escalate. The question is, does it have the inclination? Does it want to get in here and ask Pakistan to stand down?
Well, I think that China has a vested interest in seeing India pinned down in Pakistan. The Chinese have 2 points of potential conflict with India. One is the line of control, the border between the two countries, and the other is the Indian Ocean. And from a Chinese point of view, the more deeply involved India is in Pakistan, the less able it is to deal with the line of control and the Indian Ocean. So there's no question that China has a vested interest in tensions remaining in place between Pakistan and India. But whether or not China wants a war between India and Pakistan is another matter. And on that count, I think the Chinese at this point in time certainly do not have an interest in seeing this present conflict escalate. So I think they'll be a force for moderation.
I just want one more question on the Trump administration. And Trump has famously said he's an anti-war president. He said repeatedly on the campaign that, in his first term, no war started. And his number one foreign policy priority is to put an end to the Ukraine war, put an end to what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Would he want to see a third war started on his watch?
Well, this would not be a war that directly involved the United States. I think when Trump talks about the fact that he's not interested in any more wars, he's mainly talking about any more wars that involve directly the United States. India, Pakistan would not directly involve the United States. But I think that Trump's basic inclination is not to fight wars and to do what you can to foster peace. So I think, if anything, Trump's gut instinct will be to make it clear that the United States and India are close together, that they're effectively de facto allies. But at the same time, I don't think the Trump administration will want to see this escalate. And I think the Trump administration will go to some lengths. I don't know if they'll go to great lengths, but they'll go to some lengths to shut the conflict down, to prevent further escalation.
Last couple of questions. One on, the Gulf countries. Indian officials have spoken to their counterparts today, both in Saudi Arabia and UAE. These are countries that have had influence and leverage over Pakistan. They also help control the narrative in the Islamic world, as it were. You think those countries might be tapped or might be in a position to leverage with Pakistan and get the Pakistan army not to retaliate?
Yes, I think not in a major way, but I think they can contribute on the margins. I think they can make it clear that they support Pakistan in principle, but they do believe that going up the escalation ladder would not be a good idea. And I think that is their view, and it's the correct view. So I think they will be a force for moderation.
And finally, I was speaking to Christine Fair also about this whole pattern of every few years there is a major terrorist attack, India responds with punitive action, things are quiet for a few years, and then again, terrorist punitive action. Each time, the depravity of the attack, the visceral nature of the attack just gets increasing, gets compounded, and thereby, as a consequence, the the Indian action also, goes up the escalation ladder. It hits deeper inside Pakistan. Is there a way to break out of this cycle?
I think the answer is no. I think as long as the Kashmir issue is not settled, you're going to have this terrorism problem for as far as the eye can see. As your comments indicate, this is hardly the first time this has happened. It happens every few years, as you pointed out. And I think there is good reason, I'm sad to say, to expect this to continue happening in the foreseeable future. This is a very interesting case in that it illustrates once again that there's really no military solution to the problem. It's not like India can figure out a clever military strategy for solving this problem once and for all. The only way you're going to solve this problem once and for all is with a political solution that both sides find acceptable. And it's been impossible to find that political solution. And as a result, the weaker side here uses terrorism as its principal weapon for dealing with the stronger side. And again, until you get a political settlement, I don't think that this problem is going to go away. And I think India is going to be dealing with it for a long period of time.
All right, Professor John Mearsheimer, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective, your thoughts, your insights really into what's going on between India and Pakistan. Thank you very much for joining us. As I said, this pattern repeats itself every few years, but with each of those instances, it's like the envelope has been pushed a little more, to the precipice of an all-out war. Like I said, India has zero interest in going into some kind of a conventional war with Pakistan, even if it's a limited war, just a few days or weeks. But it depends on how Pakistan chooses to respond. Both the experts that we spoke to earlier in the program, Christine Fair and now Professor Mearsheimer, both of them suggesting that yes, this has become a question mark really on the prestige of the Pakistan Army, and in specific the Pakistan Army Chief, General Munir, and therefore he has no option but to retaliate. What the form, shape and nature of that retaliation is, we don't know. We can make educated guesses, but ultimately, we're talking about climbing an escalation ladder, so you don't want to second guess what may or may not happen. But I do want to talk about what did happen and the manner in which India announced to the world, presented to the world, the action that it took in Operation Sindur. These multi-location strikes hitting multiple targets in 9 different places, 21 strikes, all of them terror infrastructure, terror launch pads, terror headquarters, including the headquarters of the Lashkar in Muridke, the headquarters of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Bahawalpur, and also the headquarters of the Hizbul Mujahideen. This is terrorist infrastructure that India has specifically targeted, not military installations, not civilian installations, and also India has said that it doesn't want to escalate any further, and these measures are non-escalatory in nature. So after India struck Pakistan, Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, along with 2 young lady officers came out and presented this to the world, confirmed this to the world. Lieutenant Colonel Sophia Qureshi, Colonel Sophia Qureshi, I must say, and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh. Colonel Sophia Qureshi is the first woman officer to lead a training contingent of the Indian Army at Force 18. The ongoing ASEAN Plus multinational field training exercise, she heads the contingent there. Qureshi's prime role is to try and provide training inputs for peacekeeping operations. Also, her counterpart from the Air Force, who was there in that press conference this morning, Wing Commander Vyomika Singh. She's a decorated helicopter pilot. She's operated helicopters like the Chetak and the Cheetah in some of the toughest terrains in the country. She's played a key role in multiple rescue missions across India. She joined a Tri-Services all-women's mountaineering expedition to Mount Mani Rang, which stands at over 21,000 feet.
6 से 7 मई 2025 की रात 1:05 से 1:30 बजे के बीच ऑपरेशन सिंदूर 22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम में हुए विभत्स आतंकवादी हमले के शिकार मासूम नागरिकों व उनके परिवारों को न्याय देने के लिए लॉन्च किया गया था। इस कार्रवाई में 9 टेररिस्ट कैंप्स को टारगेट किया गया और पूरी तरह से इसे बर्बाद किया गया।
9 terrorist camps were targeted and successfully destroyed. Over the last 3 decades, Pakistan has systematically built terror infrastructure. Well-known training camps are located, as you can see on the screen. They are distributed from Savai Nala in the north, counting to approximately 21, ending at Bhavalpur to the south.
They have codenamed this operation Operation Sindoor. Exactly 2 weeks after what happened in Pahalgam, the Indian Army, through Operation Sindoor, has hit 9 targets.
The US NSA briefed Secretary of State Marco Rubio, briefed Zaka. So all these people being briefed in advance saying this is what we are doing.
Will these restore deterrence in Pakistan's mind? These strikes are significant, Anand. They are in proper Pakistan.
What is the thinking right now in GHQ in Rawalpindi? What is the thinking of Asim Munir? This is a direct hit at his authority, the authority of the Pakistan Army.
They are saying that India attacked us, remaining within their boundaries. So they have confirmed that, no jets who are there in the Pakistani airspace.
Powered by
He was personally monitoring Operation Sindur. So PM was monitoring Operation Sindur, so he was there, aware of what was going on and personally monitoring what was going on. So for some of the jibes that came at where is our Prime Minister and he's Gayab, etc., this is confirmation that he was right in the thick of it. And at the highest level of government, this Operation Sindur was being monitored. It's been planned and it's also now been implemented. Yes, Group Captain Vinod.
Great point. So let me quickly finish about this loitering munition. Most of the loitering munition today has the capability to go up without any target. And once the target pops up, it keeps loitering. And once the target pops up, it will go and hit the target. Erstwhile loitering munitions were against the radars. Today, loitering munition can be against anything. Point number one. Point number two, and coming back to Anand, your point. When is the last time that we have seen the premier of a country, of our country, Prime Minister of our country in the ops room, monitoring operations like they do in US? I mean, in the US operations, you've seen many times Obama monitoring the operations, or even Junior Bush monitoring operations. Likewise, in India, this is the first time, I think, I have seen for the first time that Prime Minister is so much involved in monitoring the operations and also taking call as to what kind of targets to take. Very, very important. Muzaffarabad, I just came to know that the tolls have gone up to 30 to 31 people, which means big names and big people in Muzaffarabad must have gone. Same is in
Just give me a moment. I also want to go across to Aman Sharma, our political editor. The Prime Minister Modi monitoring these operations live. Aman, what more details do you have? All right.
This is an important development actually in the larger scheme of things, not just optically, but this does tell you that the Prime Minister is completely involved. And people who have been constantly critical of the Prime Minister perhaps will need to look back. I don't want to make this political at any level, but the fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister guiding this, you saw him on the first day itself. He returned from Saudi Arabia very, very quickly. He was on the first flight he's landing at 7 in the morning, held a meeting at the airport, came to his residence within an hour or two. He was already conferring with the inner core and the inner team, and by the evening he was chairing important meetings with the entire defense establishment.
Aman is also joining us. Aman, what more can you tell us? PM Modi was monitoring this live at 7 LKM.
Yes, Zaka, this ritual we can confirm that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was monitoring Operation Sindoor. He was very much in the thick of the things as the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force have conducted a joint coordinated strike inside 9 sites in Pakistan, especially targeting the terror headquarters of the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba. This strike is much, much bigger than Balakot. When one terror camp was targeted, now we have 9 sites, including the terror headquarters of the Jaish and the Lashkar
what we can confirm through top level sources is that the Prime Minister was monitoring this operation. He had a busy day. You know, yesterday he was also at a media event later in the evening at 8 o'clock, but he was monitoring the operation, and he has had multiple meetings yesterday also where the entire operation was fine-tuned. No, over the last 2 to 3 days, we saw him having separate meetings with the Air Force Chief, the Army Chief and the Navy Chief. He also had multiple meetings with the NSA Ajit Doval, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and the Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah. All this seems to be a very, very planned, coordinated
Do you know
operation.
who else was with him while this operation was underway and while he was monitoring it? Any idea?
Well, Rahul, those details we don't have yet, but we can confirm this much, that the Prime Minister was monitoring this operation. This has been the case earlier in the big surgical strikes carried out earlier also. But this time, I think because the strikes size and the strikes...
There's more. Payal Mehta has just now got more information. Aman, at this point, Payal Mehta has got more information.
Identify, track and punish every terrorist.
हर व्यक्ति को चुन चुन कर जवाब भी मिलेगा, जवाब भी लिया जाएगा।
और हमारी यह कार्रवाई बेहद सोच समझकर सधे हुए तरीके से की गई।
Located close to Lahore in Pakistan's Punjab province, serves as the headquarters of the Lashkar. The group operates from Markaz-e-Taiba.
The Indian Army, through Operation Sindur, has hit 9 targets.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you for staying with us here at CNN News 18 on our continuous coverage on Operation Sindur. Bharat has decimated Pakistan terror hubs, but Pakistan continues to torment our civilians. Right at the top of this edition and this hour, we'd like to bring you some news which is very disturbing. Pakistan continues to pound civilian establishments while trying to play victim card with the world. This is the true picture of these brutes. They will not learn. A pounding given right at the heart of their establishment, right next to their doorstep, is not enough. Look at what they are doing in Punch, in Jammu and Kashmir. They are targeting civilian establishments, and they are even dropping artillery right outside the UN field station. This is how these brutes are. This is Punch Rajouri region. Indians killed by Pak guns. First Pahalgam, now Punch. The attack on innocent civilians continues. Women, children among 43 injured. Women, children among 15 dead. In the last few hours, through this morning till now as we speak with you. From Punch to Rajouri, from Mendar to Mendar, Pakistani troops have resorted to unprovoked firing in 8 forward sectors along the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir, violating ceasefire agreements and prompting retaliation from Bharatiya troops. But this has been incessant from their end. They have been embarrassed. They are going and telling the world, look, Bharat has pounded us, but this is what they are doing. After Pahalgam, this is Punch, Rajouri, Mendar, this is Kupwara, a house of a civilian. This is against even basic norms. This is a war crime that the Pakistanis are committing. And look what they are doing. Civilian establishments in Jammu and Kashmir. People who they claim that they are actually fighting for, they are pounding them. And these shells are claiming innocent lives. This pounding continues. Akash is joining us with more. There are a lot of pictures that have come in which we are not putting on air because the visuals are very, very disturbing. There are people who've been maimed, youngsters who've been maimed, women who've been maimed, so badly injured. The shells have torn their bodies, parts of their bodies to shreds. They're bleeding profusely. And people, others who are who are evading the oncoming shells are taking them to safety along with the personnel and local village civil defense and volunteers there. Look at houses destroyed. The visuals coming in from the hospitals are shocking, viewers. Yes, Akash.
Anand, this violation has been happening across the LC, but condition in Poonch is quite different. And Anand, I want to share it with you. I have visited Poonch several times because of our narcotics investigation. And, there I have seen that how, in Poonch specifically, there are several sectors where in the base we have one Indian village and at the top of the hill we have one Pakistani post. And from that particular height, you can actually target these, villagers. So this is exactly what is happening at this point in time when Pakistan is reacting out of frustration because they were caught sleeping when Indian Armed Forces launched this operation Sindur and carried out this operation where 9 of these locations were targeted. Pakistan has been involved in the ceasefire violation where we have been learning that at least 15 people have lost their life and Poonch is largely affected because of the fact that it is south of Pir Panjal, where terrain is so different that, on the top of the hill you have Pakistani post and in the base you have one Indian village. Though Indian Army is retaliating, Anand, but then someone who is sitting at the top will always have an advantage, and this time around they are not targeting the Indian post, but actually the residents. And we have seen the pictures. You rightly pointed out, these individuals have nothing to do with what is happening. This should be in fact between forces versus forces. But it is not happening, and this is inhuman. In fact, I have seen several videos. Anand, we cannot put out those videos, of course, but then it has been happening, and till now artillery was not being used by Pakistan. But last night, since they could not do anything of the sort of operation that was launched by Indian Armed Forces, out of frustration, they have opened the artillery fire. In fact, we are learning that they are using smart ammunition as well. Assessment is still going on and we'll get more details on it as to what is the kind of ammunition
this is a war
using.
crime. No,
But
this
we
is a
have been
country which is
told
going
that
and playing victim, but this is Bharat should bring this up to the notice of the international community, saying look at what the Pakistanis are unleashing upon innocent civilians, and they are not supposed to be doing this. They claim that they are playing a fair game, but this is vile and this is devious, and they should not be doing this. The other factor is that if we are saying no more Pahalgam, then our forces and our government should also turn around and say no more Poonch Mendar and no more targeting innocents along the LC, thinking that you can fire at will and you can kill and maim at will. So let's hope that the government is not resting on what has happened with Operation Sindur, and they continue on in such a way that these guns are silenced on the other side. Because these people who have lost their lives today, it hurts. These people who are hurt, who are injured, who are maimed, and whose homes have been destroyed by the Pakistani guns, they also deserve justice and they also deserve a certain level of retribution. Akash, thank you for your inputs. Great job done on ground. He continues to be in Jammu and Kashmir tracking the developments as we continue to track the developments here. But let's bring you up to speed on what's happened over the last 14 to 18 hours. On the 22nd of April, we heard the screams of Lieutenant Vijay Narwal's wife in Pahalgam moments after terrorists targeted innocent tourists in Pahalgam, attacked Hindu men after singling them out and shot them dead in cold blood. The screams, the pain, the grief, the anger of the families of the 26 civilians resonated with 140 crore Bharatiya. Bharat's retribution plan was top of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's agenda, who felt the pain personally. Bharat hit back and hit Pakistan hard within a fortnight, responding to Pahalgam terror attack by striking 9 sites in Pakistan. These sites were identified, tracked and punished. This was in Pakistan and Pak-Occupied Kashmir. This carrying a message that was both emotionally resonant and symbolically heroic and important. All the 9 sites that were selected, all the installations